Deho, our special monkey, was still fast asleep in his bed in the morning when a voice called to him from downstairs by his auntie, urging him to come down. After listening to his aunt's voice resonating throughout the house, letting everyone know that breakfast was ready and urging them to hurry, she muttered about how lazy the kids were before returning to the kitchen to continue preparing breakfast. Deho stirred in his bed, slowly waking to the repeated calls. She warned loudly that if they didn't hurry up, she would begin eating without them. This woman was his aunt, the one who had cared for him and raised him with love over the years. Deho got out of bed, freshened up quickly, and called out to her, saying he was on his way. 7 years earlier, his world had been turned upside down. His biological parents had perished in a devastating car crash, passing away instantly. May their souls rest in peace. From that moment, he had been left all alone, an orphan with no family to turn to. He had been close to being sent to an orphanage, but destiny had other plans. His father's best friend had stepped in, adopting him and welcoming him warmly into their home. It was through this act of kindness that he met his new family. His uncle had brought him home, introduced him to everyone, and from that point on, they had lived together. Now, at 20 years old, Deho still shared a strong bond with them. As he came downstairs, Deho was greeted by his cousin, Mia. He affectionately called her Mia Nuna. She was the family's eldest daughter, a college student who was 23 years old. She had always treated him like a little brother, looking after him with genuine affection. Among all his family members, Deho had the closest bond with her. After exchanging greetings with Mia, he continued toward the kitchen to greet his aunt, who was busy finalizing breakfast preparations. Then he made his way toward his uncle, Cha Young-gu, who was beckoning him over to come eat. Uncle Young-gu had once been his father's business partner and dear friend. Deho felt forever grateful to him for embracing him as part of their family. His uncle gestured for him to sit at the table. His kind-hearted aunt, Jong-un-ah, bustled around the kitchen, setting breakfast dishes on the table. She was always tirelessly taking care of everyone, her nurturing nature like that of an angel. Her daughter, Cha-mia, was assisting her with breakfast. As they were finishing up, Aunt Jong-un-ah noticed that Sua had yet to come downstairs. She asked her elder daughter, Cha-mia, to go upstairs and wake Sua. Before Mia could respond, Deho quickly rose from his seat and offered to go instead. As he headed upstairs, his aunt and cousin shared a quick exchange about him. Cha-mia commented that Deho was always so full of energy. Smiling warmly, her mother responded that it was a wonderful trait. Deho climbed the stairs to Sua's room. Sua was 21 and had been the family's youngest before Deho came along. He carefully opened her bedroom door and found her still asleep in bed. Walking softly into the room, he called out to her, letting her know that Aunt wanted her downstairs for breakfast. Half asleep, Sua grumbled that she didn't want to eat. Then, realizing he had entered her room without her permission, she snapped at him, reminding him that he wasn't allowed to just barge in. Embarrassed, Deho quickly apologized, closed the door, and hurried back downstairs. Sua Nuna loved spending her time reading and writing in her dark, quiet room. Deho was still trying to build a closer relationship with her, but she remained the most distant member of the family. Even after all these years, he had yet to figure out how to connect with Sua Nuna. Returning to the kitchen, he informed his aunt that Sua Nuna said she didn't want to come down to eat. His aunt looked surprised, puzzled by her younger daughter's refusal to have breakfast. She began to feel concerned, thinking about how unusual Sua's daily habits had become and worrying that it might eventually affect her health. Uncle Young-gu, however, brushed off her worries, loudly insisting that everything was fine and that Sua was clever enough to look after herself. He then urged everyone to begin eating. Seated at the table, Deho felt thrilled at the thought of breakfast. Soon enough, the entire family gathered around the dining table and started eating together. This was the home where Deho had spent his childhood, a place overflowing with warmth and security. Mia Nuna, flashing a playful smile, teased him by saying he ate way too much. Still chewing, Deho replied that the food was simply too delicious for him to resist. Everyone burst out laughing and continued chatting and playfully teasing one another. This was the perfect home for Deho. It was his beloved sweet home. After finishing breakfast, Deho stepped outside. He sat on the ground with one of his classmates, engaging in a casual conversation. His classmate was Gobong, a boy from his high school who happened to live nearby. Gobong was somewhat infamous for always dozing off during class. While they were talking, Gobong suddenly asked Deho an odd and unexpected question, whether he had ever seen a girl's underwear. Caught off guard, Deho paused for a moment, flustered, and asked Gobong what he was talking about. Feeling sympathetic toward Gobong's loneliness, Deho often made it a point to keep him company. That bond was what had turned them into best friends. Gobong kept teasing, asking if Deho had sisters and whether he had ever seen their underwear. Deho, once again embarrassed, firmly responded that he would never want to see his sister's underwear. Laughing slyly, Gobong told him he would show him something amazing. He pulled something out of his sister's underwear from his pocket, chuckled, and said to treasure it. After a while, the two friends got up, hopped onto their bicycles, and rode back to their homes. As night descended, Deho lay in bed, trying to fall asleep, but he couldn't find peace. An unexplained restlessness filled him, and his heart was racing for reasons he couldn't understand. Feeling thirsty, he decided to go downstairs for a glass of water. He filled a glass and began drinking, standing quietly in the dimly lit kitchen. All of a sudden, he heard a noise. Startled, he froze in place, trying to figure out where the sound had come from. Straining to listen, he picked up on a faint sound. He wondered if it had come from his aunt's room. He thought that maybe she wasn't feeling well. Concerned, he cautiously moved closer to the room. The door was slightly opened. He hesitated, torn between wanting to check if she was okay and wanting to retreat. Peeking carefully through the opening, he was stunned by what he saw. His uncle and auntie were engaged in an intense yoga session in their room. Deho stood shocked, overwhelmed by the scene before him. He told himself that he shouldn't stay any longer and should head back to his room. Without wasting time, he hurried back upstairs, lay down on his bed, and tried to steady his racing thoughts. He couldn't stop replaying what he had just witnessed, wondering if it was the same thing the mischievous kids at school whispered about something they called making love. Pushing away the troubling thoughts, he decided he needed to sleep as soon as possible. The night quietly passed. The next morning, he woke up still feeling a lingering sense of embarrassment because of his banana shake stuck to his undergarment. Mumbling to himself, he reminded himself that he needed to hide the evidence before anyone found something suspicious. Nervously, he tucked the underwear deep within the clothes piled in the laundry basket, hoping it would stay hidden. His heart pounded anxiously at the thought of getting caught. Meanwhile, downstairs in the kitchen, his aunt was sorting through a bunch of tomatoes. Speaking to herself, she praised her decision to go to the market early, pleased with how fresh the tomatoes were. Before long, her eldest daughter, Mia, came downstairs. Mia cheerfully entered the kitchen and playfully slapped her mother's cake, making her jump in surprise. Startled, her mother gasped and asked if she was already awake and downstairs. Mia just laughed, sat down at the dining table, and teasingly told her mother that her cake was beautiful and still flexible, advising her to take good care of it. She said it all in a bright, joking manner. Still a bit flustered, her mother asked why Mia was wearing Sua's pants. Mia glanced down at herself and chuckled again. At that moment, Deho entered the dining room. Mia greeted him cheerfully, and his aunt also welcomed him warmly, urging him to come over and sit down. Avoiding eye contact with his aunt, Deho quietly sat at the table and asked where his uncle had gone. His aunt informed him that his uncle had left for a business trip and wouldn't be back for several days. Feeling a bit relieved, Deho quietly started eating his breakfast. Soon after, his aunt moved on to sorting the laundry. As she worked, she muttered to herself about how Deho seemed to be having dreams often these days. She loaded the clothes into the washing machine and switched it on. While folding the remaining clothes, she thought to herself about Deho's difficult life. Becoming an orphan at such a young age had prevented him from experiencing a normal upbringing like other children. She felt that someone needed to guide him properly through life. She also sighed inwardly about how her husband appeared indifferent to such matters, knowing that it wasn't a good thing. Later that day, Deho went out to meet his friend Gobong. They met near a small food stall. Gobong, still in his usual teasing manner, promised to show Deho something even more incredible next time. Deho quickly declined, telling him not to bring anything anymore. Then, hesitating slightly, Deho mentioned that he had something he needed to talk about. Summoning his courage, he explained everything that had happened the previous night. Gobong was completely stunned, reacting loudly and dramatically. Panicking, Deho urgently told him to keep his voice down. Still in shock, Gobong muttered that what Deho described sounded like the sort of bad things only perverts did, insisting that there was no way Deho's aunt and uncle were involved in something like that. Feeling awkward, Deho said that maybe it was wrong of him to even ask, that he was only curious. He stressed that he hadn't done anything wrong. After that, they both headed back to their homes. That night, Deho lay on his bed, tossing and turning, unable to find peace. His heart felt tangled and restless. Staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, he suddenly heard a voice. His aunt entered his room, noticing that his light was still on. She asked him if he wasn't sleepy yet. Startled, Deho quickly responded that he was just about to fall asleep. His aunt then asked if he would like to have a little chat with her. She walked over and sat down on the bed beside him. The situation felt awkward, making Deho's body stiffen with nervousness. Yet his aunt continued speaking softly. trying to make him feel at ease. She seemed on the verge of saying something serious and pulled something out to show him. Confused and curious, Dejo asked her what it was and why she was acting so strangely. Looking directly into his eyes, his aunt spoke in a soft, low voice, saying that he must be becoming a grown-up now, and wondered aloud about what she should do with him. She wanted to teach him some basics about resistance band sessions. Deho's aunt gently asked if he wanted to learn about resistance band sessions, her tone calm but firm. Dejo paused, uncertain how to respond. He opened his mouth to answer but struggled to find the right words. Almost as if seeking confirmation, he asked whether Uncle Ronald had gone through the same training. His aunt was briefly surprised but quickly collected herself. She responded, almost casual, that yes, Uncle Ronald had experienced the same. However, deep down, she couldn't shake an uneasy feeling about how to prepare Dejo for future matches. It became obvious that Dejo barely grasped what was being asked of him, and she realized, somewhat reluctantly, that she would have to explain everything to him. After a short silence, Dejo, though still uncertain, showed through his voice and body language that he was eager to learn the one-on-one hit techniques. Softly, he said he wanted to learn too. Her mind raced, searching for the right way to begin this sensitive lesson. She felt a nervous flutter, unsure of where to start or the proper method to approach it. It was difficult, and she wondered if she was doing the right thing by teaching him how to train for a yoga session. Still, she pressed on, knowing it was part of his yoga session journey. Finally, after a moment's thought, she asked him if there was a girl he liked. Daiho's cheeks turned bright red because he could only think about his auntie right now. His aunt, seeing his embarrassment, smiled warmly and clarified that she meant anyone he felt close to, regardless of who it was. She watched his expression shift slightly, as though someone particular had entered his thoughts. She called him affectionately and continued, saying she was happy he was ready and that they would take things slowly. She reminded him that this was all part of building him up for his career and that it was important for his overall well-being. Her thoughts drifted back to when Dejo was just a boy, recalling the day when some kids had mocked him for being an orphan and shoved him into a creek. She remembered rushing to him, asking what had happened, who had hurt him, and how she could help. He had been soaked and humiliated, and she had patiently helped him clean up. Back when he was a baby boy, she used to bathe him, knowing it wasn't a big task, but recognizing how much pain he had already faced even then. That memory stayed with her, a reminder of how fiercely she had always tried to protect him from the cruelty of the world. His aunt felt a pang of shock, wondering how he could have hidden something so painful from her. He looked at Aunt June and asked what he was supposed to do now. She asked about the next step. He suddenly cried out in pain, visibly anxious and overwhelmed. She began guiding him through the cardio session experience. As they continued, she found herself wondering how she could make him even more aware and prepared because she knew she couldn't stop at just the basics. Dejo then asked Aunt June if it was over now. She replied no, and kept reminding herself that once this was done, there would be nothing more left to teach him. This was purely for his professional growth. At the same time, she worried briefly about whether Dejo might think she was a strange woman because of her methods, but she shrugged. The thought of it didn't matter to her, as long as he learned properly. After all, he was already a young man now. After completing the yoga session, his aunt began counseling him. He continued to assure her that he had fully understood everything she was explaining. Eventually, his aunt rose to her feet and, with a tone of trust, told him that she would place her faith in him. He remained seated on his bed, a look of confusion clouding his face, while his aunt quietly left the room. As she descended the staircase, her thoughts wandered. Just as she had anticipated, she concluded that he truly knew nothing. She reflected on his gentle nature and the fact that he had very few friends surrounding him. It was as if he had grown up alone, entirely oblivious to the world beyond its walls. Upon reaching the kitchen, she poured herself a glass of water and drank slowly, still absorbed in her reflections. She felt a deep sense of relief, thankful that she had managed to teach him the necessary lessons in time. Feeling reassured, she returned to her room and soon fell into a peaceful sleep, convinced that she had done the right thing. The following morning, Mia inquired about her father, wondering aloud where he was. Her mother gently explained that he would return the next day. While seated at the dining table, Mia, her curiosity unabated, asked her mother who had eaten her cake. At that moment, Dejo appeared at the dining table and offered a bright good morning to everyone present. Aunt June asked him if he had slept well. An immediate sense of nervousness and awkwardness settled over both Dejo and Aunt June. Feeling unsettled, Aunt June quickly made her way toward the kitchen. Meanwhile, Mia, still at the table, began teasing Dejo, accusing him of having eaten her cake. Dejo repeatedly insisted that he had not touched it. From the kitchen, Aunt June mused that Dejo must have been fully aware of everything that had transpired the previous day. A flush of slight embarrassment rose within her as she returned to the dining table and suggested that since the three of them were gathered, they should go ahead and eat. Following breakfast, Dejo quietly retreated to his room. Later that night, Dejo found his thoughts drifting to Uncle Ronald's impending return the next day. Feeling a surge of restlessness, he rose and made his way toward his aunt's room. He pushed the door open slightly, causing Aunt June to startle and immediately inquire as to who was at the door. Dejo stepped hesitantly into the room and asked if she was still awake. Aunt June, catching her breath and recognizing his voice, asked what was troubling him. After a pause, he finally managed to apologize for waking her, gently assuring her that there was no cause for concern. Dejo eventually started doing resistance band sessions with his aunt. Mia was fast asleep in her room, so Aunt June and Dejo were not worried that anyone would come and interrupt them. Aunt June was worried that someone might come. At one point, Dejo asked her what he should do next, seeking guidance mid-match. Suddenly, Aunt June was caught off guard by one of his yoga session moves and, surprised, asked where he had learned such a technique. Aunt June commented that he was genuinely good at wrestling training, impressed by his skill, and praised him for doing it very well. However, she also warned him seriously that he must never tell anyone about their playful yoga session. Dejo promised that he would not. The next morning, Aunt June was on the rooftop hanging out clothes to dry. She appeared visibly nervous and preoccupied with worry. Inside the house, Mia was trying on new clothes, checking how they looked on her feet, and admiring herself in the mirror. In another part of the house, Sua sat alone in a dark room, working on her computer, completely absorbed. Meanwhile, Dejo and his friend Gobong were outside on the ground, feeding milk to a cat and chatting casually with each other. After some time, Gobong left and went home. That night, Aunt June was cleaning the lounge while Mia prepared dinner. When dinner was ready, Mia called out to announce it. Aunt June came and sat down at the dining table, her expression still full of worry. She mentioned that Sua was once again not coming out for a late-night snack. Mia told her mother to leave Sua alone, but Aunt June expressed her concern, saying she did not want Sua to become stubborn by being left entirely to herself. While eating, Mia asked her mother why their father had not returned, since she had earlier said he would be back that day. Aunt June replied that he had a lot of work to finish and would return tomorrow instead. At the dining table, Aunt June and Dejo both sat nervously, each avoiding eye contact, unable to face one another properly. All of them ate their meal in an awkward, heavy silence. Aunt June kept glancing at Dejo, noticing how nervous he seemed, and this observation made her even more anxious. After the tense meal, everyone retreated to their bedrooms to sleep. Lying on her bed, Aunt June found herself unable to fall asleep. She thought about Dejo, wondering if he was sleeping well tonight. Suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. It was Dejo, who had come quietly to her room. He apologized to her, explaining that he wanted to play another wrestling battle. Aunt June was shocked as to why he wanted to do this again. Both started their one-on-one hit training again. She thought to herself that she should probably tell him to stop. Another thought crossed her mind as well, that her husband would be returning home the following day. Eventually, after finishing the session, Dejo went back to his room. The next morning, Aunt June was caught by surprise when her husband arrived earlier than expected. She excitedly called out to the others, announcing that Daddy was home. Uncle Younggu immediately asked about Mia, wondering where she was. Aunt June called for Mia, who quickly came downstairs. Upon seeing her, her father handed her a box of walnut cookies. Mia was overjoyed, thrilled to receive them because she loved them very much. While Aunt June and Uncle Younggu stood there smiling, they noticed Dejo nearby, quietly drinking a glass of water. He appeared noticeably nervous and uneasy. Younggu asked Aunt June what was wrong with Dejo, but she merely shrugged, choosing not to answer. Instead, she cleverly diverted the conversation by asking him whether he had eaten yet, calling him dear with affection. Still, in her mind, Aunt June could not stop thinking about how Dejo seemed a little disappointed. She began to worry whether she had perhaps done something wrong. Later that evening, after taking her shower, Mia was walking toward her room. She wore her bathrobe and she moved through the house. As she neared her room, she suddenly turned and saw Dejo standing there. She asked him casually what was going on. Dejo, looking hesitant, replied that he wanted to talk to her. She invited him into her room, telling him to come in. Both of them entered Mia's room and sat down together. Once they were settled, she asked him what it was that he wanted to talk about. Dejo hesitated, his voice faltering as he began by apologizing and calling her Mia sis. However, after only speaking half the sentence, he grew nervous again and stopped. Seeing his hesitation, Mia urged him to hurry up and say whatever was on his mind. Finally gathering his courage, Dejo asked if she could help him with the yoga session. Mia was utterly shocked by his request and screamed, demanding to know what he meant. Aunt June was working in the kitchen, thinking to herself that now that her husband was home, Dejo wouldn't be able to visit her anymore. She was also thinking that she had already taught him enough. He was a boy, after all, and he would eventually figure it out on his own. Then she prepared a tonic and brought it to her husband, who was lounging. Meanwhile, in Mia's room, Mia was laughing at his request to play a wrestling match. She was asking him if he seriously wanted her to play a wrestling match with him. He said yes, explaining that he had tried practicing alone, but still couldn't figure it out properly, and he would be glad if she could help him. He was completely drenched in sweat. Mia asked him what was wrong with him, calling him Little One, and wondered if he even knew what it. He said that from what he understood, it was something he was supposed to do to stay healthy. He had heard that if someone were to become older, they needed to do it. Mia got annoyed and asked him if he picked up that nonsense from Gobong. He lied to her, saying yes, that Gobong told him about it. Mia said that she always found that kid creepy. In his thoughts, Dejo was feeling bad for Gobong because he had lied and blamed him, but he couldn't reveal that it was actually Auntie who taught him. He had to keep it a secret. Mia asked him again what exactly he wanted her to do. He suggested that she just lie down still and he would take care of the rest. She agreed, but warned him to finish it quickly because she needed to rest. He thanked her and started setting up for the wrestling match. She told him she would be looking at her phone, so he should get it over with quickly. She couldn't really understand what he was doing and started thinking that this wasn't good. Dejo was getting weirder because he kept hanging around someone like Gobong. Then he started a yoga session, and she got shocked, but couldn't immediately stop him. She thought that he would simply do that, but she was proved wrong. She tried telling him to stop because he was scaring her. He kept trying to convince her, saying he would finish quickly. She was thinking that he is already 20 years old and a grown-up now, so she shouldn't have to be surprised by this kind of behavior. But he still couldn't stop and saying again that he would finish quickly. During the yoga session, he asked her what had just happened to her and why she was screaming. He continued the session, even though she had tried to stop him and failed. After they finished the resistance band session, she became angry at him. She told him he was acting like a little kid and she had just taken a shower and that the whole situation was embarrassing. He remained confused and kept asking her again and again what had just happened. She screamed at him, saying that he really had no idea. They had just had a yoga session. He looked even more puzzled, trying to convince her that he didn't mean anything by it. She scolded him, telling him he didn't even know what he was doing and how strange he was behaving. She then demanded that he leave her room, saying she needed time alone to think. She repeatedly told him to get out. He eventually stood up and went back to his own room. Lying on his bed, he began thinking deeply about the resistance band session with Mia Nuna. He wondered to himself if that meant he and Mia Nuna had to get married now. He also thought that although he didn't fully understand what had happened, it had felt really good. The next morning, Aunt June called the children to come down for breakfast. He woke up, stepped out of his room, and saw Mia standing there. He sat down first, while Mia stood there staring at him. Then she slapped him lightly on the head and began walking downstairs, telling him to hurry up, or she would eat all the delicious food herself. He remained standing there, looking confused. Later, when night fell, he was peeking into Mia's room, watching her as she exercised. Suddenly, he entered the room. Mia got startled and demanded to know what he was doing there. He asked for permission to come inside. Mia smirked, guessing that he probably wanted to wrestle again. He hesitated and quickly denied it, insisting it wasn't like that. She told him she had something to ask because she was very curious and invited him to come closer. He approached her and stared at her silently. She urged him to hurry up and tell her what was on his mind, practically forcing the words out of him. Finally, looking awkward and excited, he asked if they could have an exercise session again. Sua was working on her computer in her dimly lit room at midnight. After getting tired, she decided to leave her room and head to the kitchen to find something to eat. She went downstairs, opened the fridge, and began grabbing all the ingredients she needed. While she was gathering food, she noticed someone approaching. It was her mother, who looked very worried to see her daughter in the kitchen at such a late hour. Her mother asked Sua about the late-night snack. At that moment, Sua was frying an egg. Sua replied that she wanted to make a sandwich. Her mother questioned her, asking what she was doing with her life, since she had completely flipped her day and night schedule. Sua responded that the holidays had just begun and asked her mother if she could just let it go for once. Even though Sua brushed her off, her mother still looked worried about her. She advised her to eat properly and mentioned that there was cheese available if she wanted to add it to her sandwich. Sua said she understood and told her mother she could go back to her room now. Feeling sad because of Sua's cold behavior, her mother climbed the stairs again, thinking that at least Dejo must be doing fine by now. While passing by Dejo's room, she noticed something strange hanging on his door. She stood there for a moment, wondering what it was supposed to mean. Meanwhile, in Mia's room, Mia was asking Dejo if he was feeling embarrassed. He panicked and quickly said that it wasn't like that. In reality, he couldn't believe what had happened the day before. Mia, growing impatient, demanded that he explain himself clearly. He then continued, explaining that when she had told him they had a wrestling match yesterday, he had no memory of what he actually did. Confused, he asked Mia if she was going to have a baby. Mia got even more annoyed at the strange question and asked what exactly he was trying to say. Dejo, still fumbling for words, said that since she was going to have a baby, he thought maybe they should have another yoga session. He honestly admitted that he didn't even know what he had done the previous day, so it felt unfair to even call it a yoga session. Mia stared at him for a moment, then tried to simplify things, asking if he was saying that he wanted to have a proper wrestling session with his sister. She laughed at the absurdity of it. She then asked him what he really thought. Dejo answered that he believed it was something people only did when they wanted to have a baby. Mia shook her head and remarked that the little kid was clearly learning the wrong things. Seeing his confusion, she offered to explain it to him more clearly. Mia also confessed that she didn't think she would ever get the chance to have much experience because she wasn't very popular with boys. She reminded him that he didn't even remember their wrestling session from yesterday. Still confused, Dejo listened as Mia asked if he wanted her to serve him one more time. He asked cautiously if she was sure about it. When he asked whether she would help him again, she told him that it wasn't really about exercise sessions. She said that thinking about it too much was pointless, especially since they had already done it once. For him, she said, once or twice would not make much of a difference anyway. She then added that she would teach him step by step if he wanted. Dejo got excited at her words. He couldn't believe that he was about to have another resistance band session with Mia. Sua was vibing late at night, munching on her sandwich in the kitchen. Meanwhile, over in Mia's room, Dejo was still bugging her to explain things better because he honestly had no clue what was going on. Then, the two of them began a resistance band session. Meanwhile, Mia was looking at Dejo, finding him utterly adorable. She smiled and reminded him that this kind of cardio session with his sister should stay a secret. He nodded quickly and promised to keep it between them. After the yoga session ended, Dejo got up and hurried toward his room. On the way, he happened to pass Sua, who was holding a glass of juice in her hand. The moment he saw her, he panicked. Without waiting for her to say anything, he launched into an explanation. He told her that he had only been in Mia's room because she was giving him advice, and that she always taught him things everyone in the house knew. Sua simply shrugged, unimpressed, and asked who even said that. She then walked off toward her room without another word. After that, Dejo finally made his way to his own room. On the other side of the house, Mia was lying in bed, tossing and turning, trying to fall asleep. She murmured softly to herself that she still wasn't satisfied. Later that morning, Mia woke up looking visibly exhausted and deeply unsettled. A lingering sense of dissatisfaction was written all over her face. As she moved about, she couldn't help but reflect on how poorly she had slept, unable to understand what exactly was wrong with her or why she was feeling the way she did. The confusion stirred frustration within her, an uncomfortable mix of emotional unrest and dissatisfaction. She found it oddly comical, even ridiculous, yet still couldn't shake the weight of it. As she headed downstairs, her mind continued to churn with indecisiveness, unsure of what she should do about these emotions. Reaching the kitchen, she found her mother already there, preparing breakfast. Her mother noticed her and casually commented on how late she had come down that morning. Mia quickly apologized, explaining that she hadn't been able to sleep well the night before. She then sat down at the breakfast table, where she unexpectedly noticed her sister Sua already seated. The sight startled her. Sua was rarely up at this hour. Mia silently questioned whether Sua had something special planned for the day. Sua, in turn, casually mentioned that she was heading to the library. Just then, their father, Younggu, entered the kitchen. His face lit up with joy at the sight of his family gathered in one place. He remarked how long it had been since all the girls were together in the same room. Delighted, he encouraged everyone to have breakfast together. With that, the family began eating. Dejo expressed his gratitude for the meal, cheerfully commenting on how delicious it was as he ate with great appetite. Mia, however, sat watching him intently. Her thoughts drifted inward. Despite everything, she acknowledged to herself that, at the end of the day, he was the only one who could truly satisfy her desires. Yet even with him at the table, a sense of disappointment gnawed at her. She couldn't even enjoy a proper breakfast. But she quickly reminded herself that just because she felt that way didn't mean she could simply ask Dejo to fulfill her needs. She was sinking into unease, troubled by the nature of her own thoughts. Everything felt increasingly complicated and disturbing. After breakfast, Sua stood up, got ready, and walked toward the main entrance. As she slipped on her shoes, she casually informed their mother that she was heading off to the library. She left the house despite the intense heat outside. From her bedroom window, Mia watched Sua walk away. With their father gone on a business trip, Mia realized that her mother would now be alone in the house. She began to wish her mother would leave the house too. She needed privacy to carry out her plans. With that thought in mind, she walked over to the kitchen where her mother was sorting vegetables. Mia cautiously asked if her mother wasn't planning to go out that day. Her mother seemed confused by the question, prompting Mia to bring up the topic of her old flower arrangement classes. Her mother responded that it had been quite some time since she had attended those classes. Hearing that, Mia quickly began trying to come up with more excuses to encourage her to leave the house. She asked why her mother didn't consider going to the supermarket to buy better side dishes, especially with Dad returning from his business trip soon. Her mother appeared surprised by the suggestion and asked whether the current side dishes weren't already good enough. Mia agreed that they were fine, but pointed out that there was no meat left at home. She emphasized that if her mother wanted to cheer up Dad when he returned, she should cook him something nice. Mia continued to come up with excuses, gently but persistently trying to persuade her mother to go out, all so that she could have some uninterrupted private time at home alone with Dejo. Her mother looked confused and asked what she meant by meat. Mia suddenly became nervous, realizing that her mother already had plenty of meat stocked at home. She tried to cover it up quickly and suggested that perhaps her mother should go and buy some ribeye meat and cook it for their father. She added that she felt sorry for him because he had been losing weight lately. Her mother considered the idea for a moment, then agreed and said she would be right back. Picking up her bag, she left the house. Mia's face lit up with excitement. Her plan had worked perfectly, even more smoothly than she had anticipated. There was no one at home now. The house was finally empty. She felt a thrill of success as she made her way to her room. Inside, she chose a pretty dress and began getting ready. Staring at her reflection in the mirror, she wondered whether her appearance was good enough. As she stepped out of her room, she considered her next move. If she teased Dejo for a while dressed like this, he wouldn't be able to resist, she thought. All she would have to do was pretend she couldn't resist either. She hurried down the hallway toward Dejo's room, heart racing with anticipation. Just as she reached his door, it suddenly opened from the inside. Dejo stepped out, already fully dressed and appearing ready to head out. He looked surprised to see Mia standing there and asked what she wanted. Mia, slightly taken aback, asked where he was going. He casually responded that he was on his way to meet a friend and asked if something was up. His reply left him visibly disappointed. She responded with forced casualness, saying that it was nothing, that she just thought they could spend some time together since they were alone at home. But Dejo didn't seem to pay much attention to her words. He simply said he would be heading out and walked past her. Mia stood there silently, watching him leave. Her thoughts were filled with frustration and confusion. This wasn't how she had imagined things would go. Meanwhile, Dejo rode off on his bicycle, heading to meet his friend. But as he pedaled, his mind kept drifting back to Mia. Her expression, her tone, her sudden appearance in the hallway, all of it played back in his thoughts. Then, all at once, the realization of what Mia had meant finally hit him. He abruptly stopped his bicycle, his heart pounding. At that moment, he made a decision he had to go back home. Back in the house, Mia was lying on her bed, feeling bored and disappointed. Her plan had failed, and now she was stuck with nothing to do. Suddenly, her bedroom door opened. She sat up, startled to see Dejo standing there. Surprised, she asked why he had come back. Dejo replied that he had returned to hang out with her. She looked at him with renewed interest and asked what he thought they should do now. They decided to play a game of Jenga. It was Mia's turn, and she ended up losing the round. Dejo laughed cheerfully and teased her, claiming victory. Mia responded by reminding him that since he had won the game, it was his right to make a wish. Dejo agreed, acknowledging that this was, after all, the game of wishes. Mia reminded him gently that the wish had to be something he could do within the boundaries of the room they had agreed on that earlier. He hesitated for a moment, inwardly debating whether he should really ask for the wish forming in his mind. Deep down, Mia already knew she had only pretended to lose the game, subtly guiding things in this direction. Eventually, Dejo expressed his wish. He wanted a kiss from her. Mia looked at him with a mix of surprise and disbelief, questioning whether he truly meant for them to engage in that kind of again. She admitted she had been researching it on the internet, and that although she used to think such things were wrong, she had come to realize it wasn't as bad as she had originally believed. Still, Mia commented critically on how the internet had corrupted the minds of so many young people. She told him she couldn't grant that wish, not because of how she felt in the moment, but because it might lead to more difficult consequences in the future. Her refusal left Dejo visibly disappointed. Sensing his dismay, Mia encouraged him to make another wish, assuring him that she would listen and be open to anything else he wanted. She gently asked whether there was something else he wished to do with his Nuna. Nervously swallowing his emotions, Deho gathered his courage and expressed a new wish he wanted to wrestle with her. Mia gave a small, knowing smirk. She thought to herself that, in the past, she never would have suggested such a thing. But considering they had already done it once before, she felt that she could no longer deny him. She was determined to fulfill his wish. As she began to remove her clothes, Daiho offered to help her with it. Amused, she asked if he had seen such things online, to which he hesitantly admitted that he had, but only because he genuinely wanted to try it. She told him to go ahead. Internally, she questioned why she was feeling so shy, considering everything. They began their yoga session. During their late-night yoga session, Mia began to guide Deho through some basic techniques, and she emphasized the importance of being careful and mindful. As they continued, she commented on how quickly he was learning, though as the moments passed, she began to feel an odd sensation building inside her. Memories started to flood her mind like a wave. A stream of flashbacks overtook her thoughts. She remembered how close she and Deho had always been since childhood, like real siblings. They had supported each other through everything, shared meals, played together, and laughed as time slipped by effortlessly. Now they were engaged in something entirely different, something far from innocent. She observed how Deho seemed to be enjoying it more and more, looking genuinely pleased, which made her feel increasingly awkward. Unable to hide her surprise, she asked him why he was so good at it. In response, he asked if he could kiss her, questioning why she kept pushing him away. She told him that a kiss was something meant for a girl one truly liked, and in her mind, she was struggling. She thought she couldn't take Deho's first kiss. But suddenly, Deho reached out, holding her firmly, and kissed her without warning. The unexpectedness of it left her stunned. She was overwhelmed by panic and disbelief, asking him if he had really just kissed her. Just then, the front door opened. Their mother had returned home. As she stepped into the house, she sensed something was off, pausing for a moment with a curious look. She placed the grocery bags on the kitchen counter and called out as she began climbing the stairs, mentioning that it would be helpful if Mia could assist her with trimming the onions. Reaching the second floor, she approached Mia's room and gently knocked on the door, calling out to see if Mia was inside. Mia panicked the moment she heard her mother at the door and quickly called out, pleading with her not to open it. Her mother, surprised and confused, paused outside the door, wondering what could possibly be going on inside. Mia tried to explain that she was busy with something private and once again begged her mother not to enter. Her mother, clearly embarrassed by the unexpected declaration, simply apologized and said she would be in the kitchen, asking Mia to come down later. Meanwhile, her mother, standing in the kitchen and washing vegetables, began to worry quietly. Mia entered the kitchen moments later and offered to help. Her mother, still deep in thought, asked her to assist with trimming onions. Mia responded quickly and asked her mother not to say anything further. Her voice carried a strange tension. Her mother, clearly still concerned, told Mia that she had something she wanted to ask her. But before she could continue, Deho came downstairs, now fully dressed and ready to go out. He informed his aunt that he was heading over to visit Gobong and that he would return soon. Then, without waiting for a reply, he left the house. His aunt stood there, puzzled. She hadn't realized Deho had been home at all. She turned to Mia and asked if she had known, but Mia said nothing, keeping her eyes focused on the onions. Deho, on the other hand, was feeling incredible, as if he were floating. He rode his bicycle through the warm day until he arrived at Gobong's house. When he got there, he called out to his friend, but no one answered. He remembered Gobong had promised to show him a drone, and now he was nowhere to be found. Then something unusual caught his eye. A girl was lying on the floor of the porch. He immediately recognized her as Yuhi. Seeing her like that, relaxed and unguarded, made him pause. In his mind, he thought that someone lying that way looked oddly beautiful, and for a moment he had the urge to reach out and touch her. But he quickly checked himself. He knew he shouldn't touch anyone without permission. He began calling out her name, Sister Yuhi, several times. She stirred, surprised, and then sat up, clearly startled by his presence. He asked her if she had no reaction to seeing him, half teasing, half serious. Yuhi asked if he had come to see Gobong, and he confirmed it. She smiled gently and gestured for him to come over. She explained that Gobong had said the drone needed repairs and wouldn't be available just yet. She then offered him a drink, and they both sat on the porch, the afternoon heat wrapping around them like a blanket. As they sat together, Yuhi casually mentioned that it would be nice to go to the sea on a day like this. Deho, meanwhile, was staring at her, his thoughts drifting. He took a breath, hesitated for a second, and finally gathered the courage to speak. Holding a can in his hand, he asked her something unexpected whether she had ever tried a yoga session. Yuhi was completely taken aback. The question caught her off guard, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She looked completely unable to say a word. Dejo mentioned that people often do resistance band sessions together, so she could give it a try too. He then asked if she had ever done it before. His question seemed to unsettle her. Still waiting for a reply, Dejo asked again, this time wondering aloud if she had a boyfriend. Yuhi paused for a moment before quietly answering that she didn't. He then asked if he could ask her something else, and she replied by asking what it was. He proceeded to ask whether she would be interested in doing a resistance band session with him. Once again, Yuhi appeared shocked. He went on to explain that when a man and woman like each other, they can work out together as much as they like. He told her that he liked her and wanted to do it with her, but only if she felt comfortable. He was taken aback by his words. She apologized and said she was a little busy at the moment. She suggested he leave and come back another time if he wanted to play. Dejo hadn't expected that kind of reaction. Feeling awkward and rejected, he stood up and walked out of the house. As he made his way home, his thoughts kept circling around Yuhi and everything that had just happened. Meanwhile, Yuhi lay on the floor, completely lost in thought. That night, heavy rain started to pour, with thunder rumbling in the background. Dejo sat in his room, quietly holding a piece of cloth, staring at it. Suddenly, he was startled by the sound of footsteps near his door. It was Mia, calling from outside to check if he was home. He asked what she wanted. Mia said he needed to listen to what she was about to say. She told him he couldn't ask her to do yoga sessions with him anymore. Until now, she explained, she had only been teaching him resistance band sessions because she felt sorry for him being new in the neighborhood. She reminded him that since they saw each other every day, he shouldn't feel awkward around his own family. Dejo looked clearly upset by her words. Noticing this, Mia tried to console him. He confessed that he liked her and asked if there was still no chance it could work between them. She replied that she couldn't go on with it. If they kept doing this, she said, he might find it harder to get a girlfriend later, and he would regret that. She added that he didn't truly understand what he wanted yet, and it wasn't that she hated him. Then, as she turned to leave the room, she said she was going for now and added with a soft smile, asking to do it next time again. She left, leaving the door slightly ajar behind her. Later that night, Dejo's aunt walked into the kitchen looking for medicine. She had eaten something too spicy and her stomach was bothering her. When she entered the lounge, she was surprised to find Dejo sitting there, crying silently. Concerned, she approached him and gently asked what had happened and why he was crying. With tears in his eyes, Dejo asked his aunt if she could help him practice some wrestling techniques one more time. She paused, unsure of what to say, but eventually agreed. They began a grappling session. Uncle Youngu and Mia had been sleeping in their respective rooms, and Sua had been sitting in hers, watching a movie. After completing her workout session, Dejo and Aunt went to their rooms. The following morning, the entire family was gathered around the dining table for breakfast. Uncle Youngu looked over at Sua, commented that she should take a moment to observe her face in the morning. He suggested that this was an opportunity for her to make changes to some of the patterns in her life. In response, Sua casually replied to her father, saying that she had not woken up early as she had been awake all night. Her father chuckled nervously and acknowledged that she probably had a lot going on at the moment. He then mentioned that he had to go to Seoul that day. He explained that if he were able to meet with President Jin Hong in the evening, he would most likely be back the next day. He told her that he typically invited people to visit him, but this time he would be the one going to them. At that moment, Auntie June appeared to be slightly worried, and Dejo noticed her concern. She thought to herself that Dejo was looking at her again. Later, Dejo went outside to join Gobong, and the two of them spent time playing with a drone. Gobong proudly mentioned that the drone was the new Vanguard 1. Dejo cheered him on, praising him for being skilled at flying the drone. Gobong laughed and admitted that it had been a bit challenging at first, but said that it became easier after a few tries. He encouraged Dejo to learn how to fly it as well. Just then, the drone's battery ran out, and Gobong packed it up. He told Dejo to take it home and practice with it. Dejo was thrilled and expressed his gratitude for being allowed to borrow the drone. Gobong responded by saying that Dejo was always kind to him. Dejo, in turn, thanked him and said that Gobong was his only friend. After a brief pause, Dejo added that it was difficult for him to say it now, but in the future, when the time was right, he would teach Gobong something really valuable. Gobong asked, puzzled, what that could be. Dejo explained that it was something very good for men and began laughing. Gobong then asked him where he had learned about this good thing. Dejo replied that it was something that could not be done there and promised to teach Gobong later. Gobong, smiling, agreed and reiterated that Dejo was always good to him. Meanwhile, Auntie June was lying in bed, feeling a deep sense of anxiety and unease. She kept thinking that something didn't feel right. She had a strange sensation that something was about to happen, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching her room. It was Dejo, who appeared at her door and quietly expressed that he hadn't intended to do what he was about to do, but he felt the need to apologize. He said to his aunt that she had helped him a lot the previous day. His aunt reassured him, saying it was okay and that she would take care of it. She also reflected that Dejo needed to do it several times a day to improve. As she watched him, she couldn't help but think that he had been getting better and better with each passing day. However, a sense of worry crept in. She began to wonder if she had pampered him too much, letting him do whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. She realized that by always allowing him to push boundaries, she had reached a point where she couldn't stop him anymore. She was also concerned about how she would face him after that. The following morning, Auntie June appeared slightly tired. She was thinking to herself that she hadn't been able to sleep properly the previous night due to Dejo. At the same time, Dejo was thinking that June shouldn't worry so much. He believed it was something she didn't need to be so concerned about, and that all she needed to do was teach him gradually. Despite this, June couldn't help but feel a bit anxious as she thought about how, in the past, Dejo hadn't really shown any interest in yoga sessions, but now she felt that he would soon know everything there was to know about it. While preparing breakfast in the kitchen, June heard footsteps behind her. It was Dejo. She turned and asked him if he was already awake. Dejo responded that he was, and then asked that Auntie did she sleep well last night. June didn't respond to his question, but instead told him that breakfast would take some time to prepare and that he should go to his room and wait. However, Dejo remained standing there and began explaining his situation to her. He told June that although she had already helped him a lot the night before, he was still facing some difficulties that morning. June assured him that it was completely normal to feel that way. As she listened to him, she thought to herself that it was okay for him to feel this way. Afterward, Dejo asked her if he could return later so she could continue teaching him more thoroughly, as he genuinely wanted to learn everything on his own. June agreed, telling him that he needed to learn how to do the exercises properly so that he could manage them on his own. She explained that it would be difficult at first, but it would become easier over time. She was also pleased to see how much effort Dejo was putting into trying to figure out how to learn the workout techniques by himself. She then asked him why he hadn't gone upstairs as she had suggested, wondering why he was still standing there. He grabbed her waist from behind and replied that he hadn't wanted to interrupt her while she was making breakfast. She then began asking him why he seemed to be trying to exercise in the kitchen when there was still breakfast to be made. He also mentioned that both Sister Weya and Sister Shuya were always waiting to be called down for breakfast. June found herself wondering why Dejo was bringing up the idea of a yoga session in the kitchen. After their conversation, they all gathered around the table to eat breakfast. Everyone appeared to be enjoying the meal, looking happy as they ate. June couldn't help but observe Dejo and think to herself that 20-year-old boys were certainly full of energy. She also thought it might not be enough food for him, but reassured herself that it was fine since no one else would be in the laundry room. On the other hand, Sua had left the house, telling everyone she was going to the library. Mia, who had also gotten dressed, mentioned she was going out to meet a friend. June couldn't help but feel a little worried, realizing that it meant only she and Dejo would be at home. At that moment, Dejo appeared again from behind and asked her if they could wrestle once more. June said all right. After that, the two of them started one-on-one hit session again. Once it was over, Aunt June told Dejo that he should go outside and play with his friends. Dejo agreed, saying that she was right and that he really should go. Then he stood up and went out. June sat down, feeling uneasy, and started thinking that this had already been the third time they had gone through that one-on-one hit session today. When she included what had happened the previous night, it added up to over 4 times in total. That realization made her seriously worried. She thought to herself how intense and overwhelming it was to deal with a 20-year-old boy. She wasn't sure whether she'd be able to manage someone like him or whether she could properly guide and educate him. At the same time, Mia was lying on her bed, scrolling through her phone. She was thinking to herself, somewhat surprisingly, that Dejo had actually listened to the advice she had given him. She also figured that he was probably still having a hard time, since he didn't seem fully satisfied yet. But she reminded herself that it was no longer her concern. She thought that it wasn't her responsibility to help him anymore and that he needed to be accountable for his own issues. The next morning, everyone gathered together to have breakfast. Uncle Younggu mentioned that he needed a day of rest after returning from his business trip. He said that his body wasn't the same as it had been when he was younger. Aunt Jeevan agreed and told him to take a day off and stay home, promising she would cook something delicious for him later. Sua then told her mom that they should eat something other than meat for a change, maybe some vegetables. She said she didn't want to gain weight. Mia disagreed, saying that Sua was being ridiculous and that meat was the best. She then asked her mom if she could cook some sirloin steak. Sua questioned Mia, asking if she didn't worry about getting fat. Mia responded by saying that it was ridiculous to think she would gain weight, and added that South American women were twice her size, asking if she was wrong. Their mother scolded them gently, saying that girls shouldn't be discussing those kinds of things during a meal and should just focus on eating instead. After finishing breakfast, everyone went back to their rooms. Dejo was in his room, trying to practice flying his drone. Later, he took the drone with him and decided to head to his friend Gobong's house. But when he arrived, he noticed that the front door was blocked, and it looked like Gobong wasn't home. He guessed that his friend had gone out somewhere. Just then, he saw Yuhi arrive at the house on her bicycle. The two of them went inside and sat down together on the porch. Yuhi told Dejo that Gobong had gone to visit his maternal grandmother. Dejo said that he understood and that he would come back later when Gobong returned. She mentioned that Gobong was going to stay overnight at his grandmother's house. Hearing this, Dejo stood up and told her that he would leave the drone there and asked if she could give it to Gobong once he was back. As he was walking toward the door, Yuhi suddenly stopped him. He turned around and asked what it was. She looked nervous and anxious, clearly struggling to speak. After hesitating for a moment, she finally asked if he had already done his workout training for the day. Dejo replied that he had. She asked him what he had done with his Nuna. He replied yes. She also requested him to have a resistance band session with her too. He was looking shocked and stunned by hearing that. She told Dejo that she had never done a yoga session before. He seemed a bit surprised to hear that, even though he already had some idea about it. She then requested him, saying she would be really glad if he could teach her some workout techniques. At the same time, Dejo told her that if she didn't feel comfortable with the idea, she could always change her mind and just go back home. But she told him that she would go through with it. After that, she went to take a shower. While she was in the bathroom, she began thinking to herself that deep down, she had always known this moment would eventually come. She wondered if it might actually be okay for her first experience to be with Dejo. Meanwhile, Dejo was reflecting on the situation too. He told himself that working out wasn't really a problem when he had done it with Mia Nuna, but doing it with Yuhi Nuna would be his first time. He realized it felt completely different now. Then he tried to motivate himself, thinking that he needed to stay calm and composed and that he had to do a good job. He told himself that he would give his best effort and teach Yuhi Nuna the most effective wrestling techniques he knew, and also because it is Yuhi Nuna's first time, he had to be more careful about that. After a while, Yuhi appeared and apologized to Dejo for making him wait a bit longer than expected. He told her that it was perfectly fine. She then said that they could begin now, adding that she was ready, addressing him by name. As she stood there, she hesitated for a moment and then, somewhat shyly, told him that he didn't have to kiss her. In response, Dejo assured her that he wouldn't kiss her. After that, the two of them burst into laughter. Yuhi then clarified again that she didn't want to be kissed. She admitted that she hadn't done anything like that before. Then the two of them began exercise training together. After the session began, Yuhi started trembling slightly because it was her first time. As Yuhi listened to him, she found herself thinking that he was far more mature than she had originally assumed. Until now, she had always seen him as just a kid who hung around with Gobong all the time. But now she started to feel that maybe she had made the right choice by asking him to teach her. Meanwhile, Dejo looked at her and told her that even though it was her first time, she looked really beautiful. Internally, he kept reminding himself that he needed to carry himself like a grown man. He started recalling the techniques that Mia had once taught him. He couldn't help but think to himself how beautiful Yuhi looked at that moment. After they had completed their cardio session, Dejo apologized, saying that he should have been more careful. Yuhi just laughed and told him that it was fine after all. Dejo responded by saying, all right, he would head out now. Both of them felt incredibly awkward and nervous after everything that had happened. Before he left, she thanked him sincerely for what he had done for her that day. Her voice was soft and mild as she she said goodbye and told him she'd see him next time. While walking home, Dejo felt a strange mix of emotions. It felt to him as though he had just solved a very difficult problem. He thought about how, despite having worked out with Mia Nuna before, this time had been different. He had taken the lead himself. He felt proud of what he had accomplished, almost as if he had succeeded in overcoming a major challenge. As he made his way home, the evening sky spread out above him, glowing with a breathtaking and beautiful light. Meanwhile, back at Yuhi's house, she lay on the porch thinking to herself that it really hadn't been so bad after all. Later that night, Mia was in her room scrolling through her phone when someone knocked on the door. She asked if it was her mom. Dejo came in and said it was him. He asked her what was going on and added that he had something he wanted to ask. Mia began to suspect that he was unable to control himself anymore. She thought to herself, somewhat annoyed, that she was sorry to disappoint him, but his Nuna wasn't such an easy woman. Mia suddenly started getting annoyed. He asked her why she was getting so angry, and she, already suspicious, questioned him directly, wondering aloud if by any chance he had a yoga session with someone else. He seemed caught off guard and began asking her what she meant. She raised her voice and demanded that he speak directly and tell her the truth about what was going on. He hesitated, struggling to form his words, and eventually said that the situation wasn't exactly what it looked like. She screamed once again, insisting that he reveal the identity of the person he had done the workout training with. He replied firmly that it was something he couldn't disclose. Her expression shifted into shock upon hearing his response. She couldn't believe he had actually gone through with it. She continued questioning him persistently, repeating her demand to know the identity of the person, but he maintained his stance, saying that he was sorry, but he didn't think he could ever give her that information. She smirked at his answer, clearly frustrated, and sarcastically responded that carried a mix of disbelief and mockery. Then she accused him of messing up the session because he didn't know what he was doing, implying that he lacked proper knowledge of the home yoga session techniques. He admitted that he had not learned that part yet. She burst into laughter, telling him that he needed to be very careful with these things. Then she began explaining all the instructions related to the wrestling exercises, reminding him of what she had already told him in the past. She offered him advice, emphasizing that he needed to have his partner's consent before engaging in any kind of physical interaction. Doing things carelessly could lead to misunderstandings or unintended situations. She then went on to describe various techniques that seemed simpler and more appropriate, carefully explaining everything in a way that was easy to follow. After finishing, she asked him if he had understood everything she had just explained. He told her that she had made everything easy to grasp by using simple and clear language. Then, with a more serious tone, she said that she was merely trying to teach him something, and now that the lesson was over, he should leave and return to his own room. He thanked her sincerely and quietly walked out of the room. As he left, he thought to himself that she really was a strict person. The next morning, Auntie June was calling everyone downstairs, saying that the meal was ready. Mia stepped out of her room and saw Sua standing nearby with a rather strange expression on her face. Mia asked her if she was eating breakfast more regularly or enjoying it more these days compared to before. Sua casually replied that it depended on her appetite and its natural cycle. She added that since it was summer vacation, things were a bit more relaxed, and breakfast didn't feel as annoying or inconvenient as it usually had. While they both started heading downstairs together, Sua admitted that her mornings were generally boring, which made breakfast feel less of a hassle. But deep down, her mind was preoccupied with the things she had seen earlier. Sua had witnessed the two of them doing a nasty session together, and despite trying to shake the thoughts from her mind, she couldn't help but think about it as they walked. Soon everyone gathered at the dining table. Sua asked her father to pass her a plate. Auntie June had prepared a special meal that morning and was modestly saying that she wasn't sure how it would taste, urging everyone to try it quickly while adding that she had been improving her skills. Everyone at the table began praising the appearance of the food, commenting on how delicious it looked. Auntie June smiled proudly and mentioned that watching professional cooking shows had helped her improve. Meanwhile, Mia sat at the table looking slightly confused, lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, an odd suspicion crossed her mind. She wondered if Dejo had perhaps worked out with her mother. Then she immediately shook the thought away, telling herself that her brain was overreacting and she was just reading too much into things. Still, she couldn't help but feel like everything was Dejo's fault. Dejo, who was also sitting at the table having his breakfast, remained quiet. Without saying much, Mia stood up and told everyone that she was going to meet a friend, then walked out of the house. As she stepped outside, she noticed a girl standing by the entrance. She asked the stranger who she was, prompting the girl to ask about Dejo. Mia replied that she knew him, and then asked what business the girl had with him, wondering aloud if he had done something wrong. The girl calmly introduced herself, saying she was the sister of Deho's best friend and that she was there to see him. Mia's eyes widened slightly in recognition, and she asked if the girl was Gobong's sister. The girl nodded and confirmed that she was indeed Gobong's Nuna, adding that her name was Yuhi. Mia stared at her in silence, unsure of what to say next. Both of them entered the house together. Mia called out for Dejo, and upon hearing her voice, he came out and asked what was going on. She casually told him that a pretty guest had arrived and that he should come out because someone was waiting for him. Dejo was surprised and asked what she meant by a pretty guest. Mia replied with a teasing smile that he would find out once he stepped outside. He thanked her, saying, "Okay, thanks, Nuna," and started wondering who it could possibly be. Just then, Aunt June appeared and asked Mia who had come to visit Dejo. Mia quickly responded that it wasn't something her mother needed to know, assuring her that she would take care of Dejo herself. She then headed toward her room, leaving her mother slightly unsettled. Aunt June stood there, beginning to worry about Mia's strange behavior, thinking to herself that she had no idea what her daughter was up to. Meanwhile, Dejo stepped outside to see who had come to see him. The moment he saw Yuhi Nuna standing there, he was taken aback. Yuhi greeted him with a smile, asking how he was doing. Still stunned, he asked her if something had happened. She suggested they go for a walk and talk somewhere outside, and he agreed. The two of them left together. On the way, Yuhi asked him if he had been surprised to see her. Dejo admitted honestly that yes, he had been very surprised. Back in the house, Mia remained lost in thought, trying to piece together the situation. She was confused and unable to understand what was going on. At the park, Yuhi asked Dejo if it was true that he didn't own a cell phone. He nodded, explaining that he had already broken 2 phones and was currently saving money to buy a new one. Hearing that, Yuhi reached into her purse and pulled something out, asking him to take it. She told him that the phone belonged to her, his Nuna. She handed him the phone and explained that although she had used it in the past, it was still in good condition and fully functional. Dejo was surprised by her offer and asked if she was really giving it to him. Yuhi smiled warmly and told him that yes, she was offering it to him because he didn't have a phone, and she hadn't been able to stay in touch with him because of that. Her words made him pause and wonder why she had wanted to contact him. He began overthinking the reason, but Yuhi, sensing the mood shift, hesitated and quickly tried to change the topic. She nodded toward a direction and asked if he wanted to take a look over there. She said there was a place nearby she used to visit often when she was younger. With a smirk, she urged him to follow her, saying to go together. They arrived at a dark and abandoned-looking place that resembled an old factory. Yuhi began to explain that the factory had once been operational but was later shut down. After its closure, some people had started using it as a secret hangout spot. She said it was her father who had once told her the story about the place. Dejo expressed his surprise, saying he never imagined a place like that existed nearby. Yuhi told him that she had once come there with Gobong when they were younger. She recalled that Gobong had found the place terrifying and never returned after that visit. But in contrast, she admitted that she actually liked the eerie, ruined factory. She then turned to Dejo and asked if he found the place scary. He shook his head and said not really, that he wasn't scared. Yuhi gave him a playful look and began to comment on his demeanor, saying that he looked very manly. But then, all of a sudden, Dejo noticed that her expression began to change. She looked slightly agitated and abruptly asked him if he wanted to kiss her. Dejo was completely shocked by the question. Yuhi said she had just been wondering whether he wanted to try it, and added that this time, she wouldn't avoid it. Without further hesitation, Dejo reached out, pulled her close, and asked her to come closer. And then, they kissed. He asked her what your thoughts were about having a resistance band session here. She said that she was okay with this idea. Yuhi asked Dejo to hug her and hold her tightly after the yoga session. Concerned, he questioned whether she was all right, but she reassured him, saying she was fine and told him not to worry. At the same time, Mia was sitting in a restaurant with her friend. Despite being physically present, her attention was completely elsewhere. She kept glancing at her phone, checking it constantly, clearly preoccupied. Thoughts of Dejo filled her mind. She wondered if he had already returned home or if he was still out enjoying himself with the attractive guest who had come to visit him. The thought unsettled her, and she found herself becoming increasingly distracted. Noticing her distant behavior, her friend called her name several times to bring her back to reality. Mia, startled, quickly responded and tried to explain her behavior by saying she had just been looking at her phone for a moment and that it was nothing important. Her friend questioned her, pointing out that they hadn't seen each other in a long time, and yet Mia seemed more interested in her phone than their time together. She asked Mia if she had met someone new recently. Mia denied it, saying she had been at home since the start of the holidays and had no opportunity to meet anyone. Wanting to avoid further questions, she quickly stood up and told her friend she was going to the bathroom and would be right back. As Mia walked away, her friend kept her eyes fixed on Mia's phone, which was still in her hand, growing more suspicious of her odd behavior. Elsewhere that evening, Dejo and Yuhi were walking together down the street. They were laughing and seemed to be having a genuinely good time. Their body language suggested comfort and familiarity. Unexpectedly, a bus stopped across the street, and both of them were taken by surprise when they saw someone step off. It was Gobong, and his face was filled with shock, confusion, and amusement all at once. Upon seeing them together, he immediately questioned what the two of them were doing there. Gobong, completely stunned, asked Yuhi why she was walking with Dejo there. Yuhi, clearly flustered, began making excuses, insisting it wasn't what he was thinking. She explained that she had run into Dejo on her way to the city and had been worried when Gobong didn't show up. Dejo joined the conversation, supporting her explanation by saying that he had actually been on his way to see Gobong as well. At first, Gobong was confused, but he eventually reminded himself that random encounters like this were normal and nothing to be concerned about. Suddenly, Yuhi grabbed Gobong's arm and urged him to leave with her. As they began to walk, Gobong asked Dejo what was wrong. Dejo simply responded that he was coming, addressing Yuhi affectionately as Nuna. The three of them continued walking together toward home. During the walk, Gobong turned to Yuhi and mentioned that Dejo didn't have a phone. Yuhi replied that Dejo had already told her he had broken his phone and she had decided to give him her old one since she no longer used it. Gobong became excited and told her that it was a great idea, as it meant Dejo would finally have his own phone. Once home, the three of them relaxed, eating watermelon and playing with a drone. Meanwhile, Mia had returned home, visibly angry. She asked her mother if Dejo was back yet. Her mother told her he hadn't returned, which only made Mia more irritated. She stormed off to her room, seething with frustration, wondering what was wrong with that boy. He has no idea how late he has become. Her worry quickly escalated. She began suspecting that Dejo might be having a resistance band session again with that girl, and her thoughts turned bitter. She believed he had completely lost his mind. Later, while the family sat together at the dining table, Dejo quietly ate his food, unaware of Mia's intense gaze. She stared at him the entire time, her mind filled with concern over what he might be doing when he was out. Her worry was so overwhelming that she couldn't even eat properly. What troubled her even more was that she couldn't bring herself to ask him directly. Eventually, she stood up and said she had lost her appetite, so she would leave the table early. Her father thanked her for preparing the meal, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She kept thinking that she was the one who had introduced Dejo to workouts in the first place. Dejo noticed her odd behavior but chose not to say anything. That night, as he sat in his room, Mia walked in and asked if he was still awake and what he was doing. Dejo replied that he was still up and addressed her politely as Mia Nuna. She asked him where he had gotten the phone. He told her that Yuhi Nuna had given it to him. Upon hearing this, Mia's expression shifted. She asked if he was referring to the girl who had visited that morning. He confirmed it, adding that Yuhi no longer used the phone and had decided to give it to him. Then he laughed casually. Mia was visibly annoyed and asked what he meant by calling Yuhi Nuna. She demanded to know if he liked that girl. Suddenly, a wave of memories came rushing back. She thought about the past, when they used to go to school together, and she had declared that she was his only Nuna. She remembered how they used to eat meals together, and how Dejo always clung to her like chewing gum, depending on her completely. She recalled the time he had spilled food on his school uniform and how she had cleaned it off for him, her heart filled with memories of the care she had shown him. She couldn't help but think, if there was another girl, how could he love her so deeply? But then, shaking off her thoughts, she forced a smile and asked him if he wanted to play a game with his Nuna. Dejo, unaware of her emotional turmoil, replied that it was already late, but promised to play with her the next day. Mia was stunned by his response. She couldn't understand why he was acting so distant, like an old man. She asked him almost desperately whether he was trying to say he didn't need his Nuna anymore. Her emotions overwhelmed her, and she began to cry, saying that it was completely unfair. Later that night, Mia came to his room. He got worried seeing her at odd hours and asked her what she was doing there. After noticing her nervousness, he asked her what happened. He was shocked to see the weapon in her hand. She began advising him, explaining that boys often carried weapons at night, and he was no exception. She went on to say that she had anticipated he might need one, which was exactly why she had come to help him. She then asked him if she could help him put the weapon on. He was shocked and reminded her that the last time they had spoken, she had clearly said they would no longer be doing yoga together. In response, She clarified that this one-on-one hit session was only intended to teach him a few additional techniques. After a while, she told him that they should stop the yoga session there, as it would be breakfast time soon. He nodded and agreed, responding with a small smile. He added that he enjoyed kissing her, and then laughed. She was saying that it felt like he had finally come back to where he belonged. She, too, found herself thinking that perhaps she was indeed the one Dejo valued the most, and that maybe this was how things were meant to be. Still seated, he urged her to get up and head downstairs first. She told him that he should go ahead, saying that she was going to take a shower before joining them for breakfast. Before leaving, she reminded him not to think about anyone else but her. It was said softly, yet with a quiet seriousness that lingered. At the breakfast table, everyone gathered around. Uncle Youngu mentioned that he would be going on another business trip to Seoul next week, and asked the family members if there was anything they wanted him to bring back. Sua, visibly excited, asked her father if she could come along, mentioning a show she had been wanting to see. Mia, with her usual dry tone, said he could just buy her some new clothes, claiming she had nothing to wear these days. Their father chuckled and remarked that after such a long time, his beautiful daughter was finally willing to take a trip with her dad again. Aunt June then turned to Dejo and asked if he would like to come to Seoul with them. Dejo politely declined that, explaining that he suffered from motion sickness. He added that, although he wanted to go, traveling with everyone wasn't possible for him because of that reason. Mia began teasing him over his condition, and everyone laughed. Sua stood up from the table, quietly announcing that she had finished her food and headed upstairs. A short while later, she noticed Dejo following behind her and playfully teasing her. Startled, she turned around and demanded to know what he was doing, asking sharply if he was kidding her. He appeared confused and asked her what the problem was. She told him not to sneak up on his Nuna like that. He looked even more puzzled, clearly not understanding her sudden reaction. At that moment, Mia arrived and asked Sua why she was yelling at Dejo. She pointed out that they were all part of the same family, questioning whether Sua thought Dejo had meant something inappropriate. Mia tried to clarify that Sua was misunderstanding the situation and that it wasn't what she thought. Still annoyed, Sua told Mia not to pretend to be so nice to her, then turned away and went upstairs without another word. Mia sighed and told Dejo to ignore Sua's mood, urging him to go up quickly. Dejo agreed quietly and walked away. Later, Mia stood in the bathroom brushing her teeth when Dejo entered unexpectedly. He asked if she was brushing her teeth, and she replied that she had just finished. Her tone shifted as she noticed something in his expression. She demanded to know why he was acting like this all of a sudden. Without replying immediately, he walked toward her and gently hugged her from behind, saying that ever since the incident on the stairs, he hadn't been able to stop thinking about her, and that she looked beautiful. Now that she had finished brushing her teeth, he murmured that they could finally have their moment together. Her thoughts began to race. She asked herself when she had given Dejo the right to act on his own like this, to kiss her at his convenience. She knew it wasn't supposed to be like this, but by now it already felt too late to push him away. He looked at him and asked what he thought he was doing, reminding him that they were still in the bathroom. He asked in return if they could just stay like this, right there. He admitted that he couldn't hold back anymore and wanted to be close to her right. Just then a knock came at the bathroom door. It was Sua, calling out and asking if Mia was inside. Mia quickly responded that she was, while she and Dejo exchanged worried glances, caught off guard by Sua's sudden interruption. Mia firmly told Sua not to open the bathroom door. She added that she would need some time before coming out and asked her to come back later. Sua, sounding annoyed, questioned why Mia was taking so long just to brush her teeth. Mia, trying to deflect the question, asked rhetorically who said that brushing teeth could only be done in the bathroom. She told Sua she would simply have to wait a little longer. Sua, increasingly frustrated, asked how Mia could intend to stay there for so long. Mia responded curtly, suggesting that Sua should just use the other bathroom and leave her alone. Sua protested, saying she didn't want to use their parents' bathroom and insisted Mia answer her directly, demanding to know how long she was going to stay inside. Mia, exasperated, told her that she was being unusually persistent today and repeated that she should use the other bathroom because she would be in there for a while. Sua continued, accusing Mia of avoiding a simple question. She pointed out that Mia had been dodging the issue from the beginning and told her to just give a straight answer. Then, in a firmer tone, she asked again how much longer it would take. Mia, now clearly agitated, responded that she didn't know and reminded Sua that she had already explained the situation. She pleaded with her to stop knocking on the door, saying it was making it hard for her to concentrate. Sua, now concerned, started to wonder if Mia might be experiencing constipation. Mia, slightly flustered, insisted that wasn't the case. Sua replied that if it wasn't, then why was she making so much noise? Mia tried to explain, saying she had been trying to say something else entirely, but Sua dismissed the explanation and told her not to forget to leave the window and door open once she came out, and then walked away. Meanwhile, Dejo and Mia are having a workout together in the bathroom. After Sua has gone, Mia asks him where he has been learning these new yoga session techniques. Mia kept pressurizing him, demanding to know where he had learned that particular resistance band session. Dejo responded, explaining that he had done similar workouts before, though in a different way. The conversation between them continued along those lines. As they talked, Mia suddenly became emotional. Tears welled in her eyes as she thought to herself that it must have been that girl's fault. There was no way her sweet, innocent Dejo would know about such things on his own. Overcome by emotion, she asked him to leave the bathroom because she needed to take a bath. Meanwhile, Dejo began to overthink everything. He was surprised at how easily he had performed the workout, almost as if he had become too good at it. Mia, on the other hand, had always believed that this boy was naive and clueless about such things. But now she began to worry that if things continued like this, he would surpass all expectations and improve beyond recognition. Later, after finishing her bath, Mia went to her room, lay down on the bed, and started reading a book. But as the heat lingered in the air, she thought it might be nice to have an ice pop. She got up and made her way to the kitchen. Just as she reached the fridge, Dejo appeared and asked where she was going. She replied casually that she was heading to the fridge to get an ice pop. Dejo, clearly excited, suggested they go together because he also wanted one. Seeing him sticking by her side again, Mia smirked inwardly, feeling that perhaps she had succeeded. Once more, he was clinging to her like gum, and that gave her a sense of comfort. She thought to herself that things seemed to be going in the right direction, just as she had hoped. He was staying close to her again. She silently questioned what someone like Yuhi could possibly mean to Deho, especially when he was right here with her. Deho began teasing her playfully as they both searched through the fridge. She asked him which one he wanted, ice pop or something else, and when he pointed to a specific one, she grabbed it and handed it to him, saying it was for him. He thanked her warmly. Just then, their mother appeared from behind. She asked if she could have one too, and Mia handed one over. Mia turned to her and asked, half jokingly, how she managed to keep working so much when it was so hot outside. Their mother responded with a tired smile, saying it was because the whole family was home during the holidays that she had so much work to do. She added with a bit of humor that even in this weather, no one seemed to eat any less. With a playful smile, she remarked that feeding all 5 of them was no easy task, and she disliked how much cooking she had to do for such a large group. Deho chimed in, suggesting they change the topic since no one even tried to help their mother. Mia, a little defensive, asked why her mom was using such a critical tone. She reminded her that she had, in fact, helped cut onions just the other day. Mia, trying to recall clearly, added with a slight smirk that maybe it hadn't been onions she helped with, maybe it was garlic. Before she could finish her thought, Deho suddenly reached out and wrapped his arms around her waist. With a playful but determined tone, he asked her to come upstairs with him. Startled, Mia responded sharply, reminding him that he must have lost his mind. She whispered that he should be more respectful, especially with their mother still present in the room. Their mother, meanwhile, was rubbing her lower back and sighed that it had been aching lately. She wondered aloud whether she should consider quitting swimming altogether. As the conversation shifted, Deho turned to Mia again and confessed, quite seriously, that he suddenly felt like working out with her. Mia, half exasperated and half amused, simply told him to go upstairs then, accepting the invitation with an eye roll and a shake of her head. Their mother, observing them suspiciously, asked what they were up to. Mia, quick on her feet, replied that she was just feeling a bit surprised because she had eaten something cold too quickly, which had startled her. Their mother gave her a concerned look and told her to be more careful, expressing how Mia had genuinely scared her with her sudden reaction. As they made their way upstairs, Deho leaned in closer to Mia and quietly asked if she wanted him to take the lead this time during the workout. There was a glimmer of confidence in his tone, and without waiting for an answer, he added that tonight it would be his turn to teach her. They went upstairs and started working out. Mia couldn't understand what was happening within her. Her heart pounded relentlessly against her chest as if trying to break free. She asked herself why she was suddenly reacting this way, why Deho, who had always been so familiar, now appeared like a complete stranger. Deho, too, seemed unusually unsettled. He admitted he was feeling nervous, but didn't elaborate. Mia began to think that they had shared countless workout sessions before, so why was this particular moment so different? After telling her that he had to leave, Deho asked Mia not to forget to come visit his room the next day. With that, He stood up and walked out, leaving her alone. Sitting quietly in her room, Mia couldn't help but feel that he had been acting like a completely different person lately. The next morning, the whole family gathered around the dining table for breakfast. Auntie June offered Dejo more rice, to which he gratefully said yes. Dejo had always shown a strong appetite, never being picky about food, even when it wasn't his favorite. He mentioned that he had only half a bowl of rice left and asked for more. Watching him, Mia began to wonder if it was because he ate so well that he always had boundless energy whenever it was time to play. Now, with how much more skilled he had become at their workouts, it felt even more noticeable. As his aunt served him more rice, Mia found herself thinking that she could no longer see him as just an adopted brother, but as a grown-up like a man. The thought startled her. She felt a sudden wave of panic, questioning what kind of joke fate was playing on her, that how she could possibly fall in love with someone like him. She found herself spiraling, unsure why he kept occupying her thoughts like this. Sua, noticing Mia's strange behavior, asked her why she wasn't eating and what she was doing. The question snapped Mia out of her thoughts. Mia looked slightly confused as she muttered that she didn't feel like eating. Sua gave her a teasing smirk and sarcastically asked if she was still upset about the time she commented on how big her belly looked. That remark instantly triggered Mia, who flared up and retorted sharply, questioning what Sua could possibly know about such things when she had never experienced them for herself. Sua laughed casually and joked that maybe the only reason men were ever interested in Mia was because of her belly. Their mother, who had been quietly observing their exchange, now looked puzzled by the sudden escalation in their conversation. Sua then added with a shrug that she wouldn't want to be with someone who only cared about physical appearance. Mia, now visibly irritated, snapped back again, asking why Sua was acting like some expert when she hadn't even dated anyone in her whole life. Their mother, smiling despite the tension, let out a soft sigh and reminded the girls gently that they had all agreed not to bring up such topics while sitting at the dining table. Later that night, Mia quietly entered Dejo's room. He slowly woke up as she stepped in. Speaking softly, Mia reassured him that she would take care of everything for him. She then brought up a concern, advising him seriously that he shouldn't continue coming into the bathroom when she was showering. Dejo looked at her with an apologetic expression and said he was sorry. He also mentioned that Sua Nuna had already gone out, so they didn't need to worry about her being around. He then expressed his desire to work out with Mia again. Mia hesitated and warned that it might be dangerous, pointing out that their mother was still in the kitchen. However, Dejo countered her concern by saying that their aunt had told him she would be doing the laundry and was probably outside by now. After that started doing workout again. Hearing that, Mia shifted her tone and mentioned that she would be going at Seoul tomorrow, but added that her legs were starting to ache and she felt quite weak. That moment seemed to trigger something in Dejo's memory. Recalling what Mia had told him earlier, he looked at her and asked if she hadn't said that the trip would only last 2 more nights. The next day, Mia packed her suitcase, ready to leave for Seoul with her father. Her mother, noticing the luggage, asked why she was taking such a large suitcase, especially since the trip was only for 2 nights and 3 days. Mia confirmed the duration but explained that the suitcase was empty. Her mother then asked if she was planning to fill it with new clothes while shopping, to which Mia laughed and admitted that was exactly her plan. Just then, Sua came downstairs and, with a teasing tone, remarked that it wasn't just the suitcase that was empty. She hinted that the owner's brain was, too. Mia grew irritated and demanded an explanation. Sua pointed out that Mia was going to Seoul for the first time in a long while and was focused only on shopping. She asked if Mia didn't want to make the most of the trip by experiencing cultural activities, such as watching a performance or visiting a museum, things they wouldn't get to see just anywhere. Mia dismissed the idea, saying those kinds of things could be viewed anytime on a smartphone. She argued that when it came to shopping, one needed to try on clothes in person to know which ones were nice, and that's why she couldn't miss the opportunity. Their father's voice rang out from near the entrance, calling out to his daughters and urging them to get going. The girls responded cheerfully and agreed it was time to leave. Dejo took Mia's suitcase and insisted on carrying it to the car. Mia was surprised and asked when he had become so strong. Meanwhile, Sua watched them, visibly annoyed. She questioned Dejo if he would be able to manage everything on his own during Mia's absence. Dejo reassured her not to worry and wished them a good trip. Sua scoffed at their dramatic behavior, saying they were acting as if they were headed to a battlefield and that it was completely ridiculous. Their father kept hurrying them along as they loaded into the car. Mia told Sua not to sit in the back seat, reminding her that the front passenger seat was hers and that she planned to lie down in the back and sleep. Just as they settled in, their father received a call from President Park, engaging in conversation. Meanwhile, Uncle Yongu, who had come to see them off, reminded Dejo of his request to take good care of his auntie while they were gone. Dejo responded earnestly, assuring his uncle to leave it to him. Mia then turned to Dejo and asked him to listen to everything her mother said during her absence and to eat properly. With that, the car departed. Once they had left, Dejo asked his auntie if they should head back inside. She agreed and followed him in, trying to shake off a sense of unease. She kept telling herself not to think strange thoughts, convincing herself that nothing unusual would happen. She returned to the kitchen and began preparing a meal. As she was working, Deho suddenly appeared behind her, startling her. He looked nervous and told her that he was going to meet Gobong and would be back before dinner. She nodded and told him to have fun, but reminded him not to return too late. He agreed and left. After he had gone, she found herself wondering why she was acting so strangely. Meanwhile, on his way, Deho was looking around for the right location when he suddenly spotted Nuna Yu-hee, whom he had arranged to meet. He asked if she had been waiting for a long time, but she told him she had only just arrived. He asked what Gobong had been doing before she left, and she explained that he had been taking a nap, having gone to bed late the night before. Deho realized that must be why Gobong hadn't been answering his messages. As the two began walking together, Yu-hee suggested they head into the forest, and Deho agreed. Holding hands, they made their way in, and she mentioned her desire to do something there. He got shocked to hear the resistance band demand there. On the other side, Auntie June had been looking at the calendar when something suddenly caught her attention. Her eyes lit up with excitement as she realized what day it was. A flurry of thoughts began racing through her mind. It was something important that happened to fall on today. She quickly reminded herself that this wasn't the time to be spacing out. If she didn't act fast, he would return before she was ready. She told herself she had to hurry. Deho and Yu-hee had a yoga session in the forest. Not long after, Deho returned home. His sudden arrival caught her by surprise. She turned to him and asked, with a raised eyebrow, why he was already back, especially since he had said he would return before dinner. Her tone hinted at disbelief, as if his timing had disrupted something she was trying to manage. As she spoke, a knowing smirk formed on her lips, as though she was teasing him or holding back something she wasn't ready to reveal just yet. Auntie June came out of the kitchen carrying a cake. With a warm smile, she asked Deho if he liked it, telling him that she had made it herself, just for him. Looking at the cake with surprise, Deho asked her why she had gone to such effort. After all, it wasn't his birthday yet. She gently explained that she knew that, but today marked the anniversary of the day he had come to live with them, the day they had become a family. He paused for a moment and nodded slowly, his voice tinged with a hint of sadness as he acknowledged that she was right. It was also the day he had lost his parents. He recalled that it had happened in the summer, just like now. Trying to lighten the mood, Auntie June suggested that even if it was just the two of them tonight, they should still celebrate. After all, it was a meaningful day. Deho's expression turned emotional. There was a quiet excitement in his eyes, even as he seemed touched by the gesture. She called him closer and asked him to close his eyes and make a wish before cutting the cake. He looked at her and asked whether it was really necessary to make a wish. She told him that during a celebration like this, a wish was part of the tradition. When he hesitated, she gently asked whether he didn't want anything. Deho replied with a quiet seriousness, saying that even if he made a wish, who would make it come true? There wasn't anyone around with that kind of power, and it felt strange to make a wish knowing it likely wouldn't work. Auntie June responded with understanding, then asked what he would do if she could be the one to grant that wish. When he looked at her in surprise, she reassured him that she would listen to anything he asked. Encouraged by her words, he blew out the candles and told her with a small smile that he had made a wish. She asked curiously what it was, but he just smiled and said he would tell her later. She nodded and said she would wait. He then thanked her, expressing his sincere gratitude, saying that she had always been kind to him. He told her he was truly happy that she lived in their house and suggested that they continue taking care of each other in the future. A soft expression crossed her face as she leaned in and hugged him gently, thinking to herself that she needed to take even better care of him from now on. Afterward, she served dinner and encouraged him to eat well. Deho commented that he felt a little sorry for his Nuna, getting to enjoy such a delicious meal without them. He admitted that it tasted really good. Auntie June agreed, saying that eating just the two of them like this felt refreshing, and she liked the quiet intimacy of the moment. When dinner was finished, she washed the dishes, then decided to take a rest and went into her bedroom. Sitting quietly, she found herself thinking that the house felt so much more spacious that night, perhaps because it was just her and Deho home alone. She complimented herself internally, telling herself that she had done a good job tonight and that she had made the right choice dressing nicely. It had truly felt like a proper celebration. Looking at herself in the mirror, she thought that she still looked nice, even at her age. Wearing pretty clothes still made her feel good, regardless of how much older she was getting. She began to wonder if she should wear something just as nice tomorrow, or perhaps even tonight. Since her husband wasn't home, maybe this was the time to try something a little different. Just then, Deho suddenly appeared, holding his pillow in his hands. Auntie June looked up, surprised, and asked him whether he hadn't gone to sleep yet. A flicker of discomfort passed over her. It was just the two of them in the house tonight, and she wasn't quite sure how to feel about that. He hesitated and asked her if he could sleep with her tonight. She also starts thinking that, as an older lady, she also feels so strange in this house. If she places herself at Deho's place, she could understand that. She began to reflect further, thinking that, on top of everything, tonight was the day they were celebrating the anniversary of Dejo joining their family. If she refuses his request now, it might hurt his feelings. With that in mind, she sighed and told herself that she understood. Deho then added with a timid expression that it would be just for tonight. He admitted that he was feeling unusually scared in his room and didn't want to be alone. Hearing that, she felt even more conflicted. Still, she told him gently that he would need to wait outside for a moment. She wanted to change her clothes. She added that she would call him back once she was dressed. As she moved to close the door, he paused for a moment, then complimented her, saying that she looked really pretty and beautiful in her pajamas. The unexpected praise made her flinch slightly in surprise, and she avoided reacting too much. Later, after changing, she allowed him back in. The two of them lay down to sleep, but she couldn't relax. She found herself staring up at the ceiling, her mind restless. The fact that Deho was now sleeping in her room made her feel extremely uneasy. Her nerves were on edge, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the uncomfortable tension that had settled in. Suddenly, he hugged her from behind. She panicked and thought that she had to stop him before it's too late. Meanwhile, uncle and both daughters had arrived in Seoul and checked into their hotel. The daughters headed to their room and lay down, relaxing after the journey. Mia, still full of energy, remarked that she needed to buy a lot of clothes the next day. Their father soon entered their room and asked if they weren't going to sleep yet. He reminded them that they should go to bed early since they must be tired. Mia glanced at him suspiciously and asked what was going on. He sounded like he was trying to get them to sleep early so he could sneak out of the hotel unnoticed. Caught off guard, their father hesitated before denying it, saying he wasn't going anywhere. Mia narrowed her eyes and teased him, asking why he was stammering like that. Then, brushing it off, she reminded him that there were lots of clothes she wanted to buy and insisted he give her more money. He reassured her with a gentle smile, saying not to worry. He would hand her his credit card in the morning. For now, he urged them both to go to bed, as he intended to do the same. She nodded and told him to go ahead and sleep, then playfully added that she would come check on his room to make sure he was really sleeping. As he left the room, he walked down the hallway toward his own, his mind slightly unsettled. He pulled out his phone, called President Park, and informed him that he wouldn't be able to come tonight. He admitted that he was having a hard time managing things after bringing his daughters along. Back in the girls' room, Mia was still awake, staring at her phone. Her thoughts drifted to Deho, wondering if he might be crying because his Nuna wasn't there with him. After a moment of silent reflection, she muttered to herself that she was tired and should go to sleep now. Elsewhere, Aunt June was sitting alone in the dimly lit house, her thoughts tangled. She admitted to herself that the situation was growing increasingly dangerous. She couldn't believe she had even entertained the idea of letting something happen in such circumstances. She realized that taking care of Deho during this emotionally vulnerable time could carry serious consequences. At the same time, she was grappling with a strange and unfamiliar feeling, a mix of guilt, fear, and confusion. How could I let out such a sound? She started thinking that it might be just because of his presence besides her. She was assuming that he hadn't known about the actual workout yet, so she shouldn't be worried about that. Suddenly, they had a workout together. She was panicking about how she ended up in such a situation. After that, she began instructing Deho on proper one-on-one hit training. She reminded him that it was his first time learning these methods, so he needed to pay close attention. Meanwhile, Deho, though listening carefully, couldn't help but think to himself that he couldn't exactly admit Mia Nuna had already taught him all the fighting techniques before. In that moment, she found herself grappling with a sense of urgency, thinking that no matter what, she couldn't allow anything to interfere with this. Even if it meant sacrificing her own comfort, she believed Deho needed to go through the full experience and feel completely satisfied with the learning process. The following morning, she and Dejo sat together at the breakfast table. She encouraged him to eat as much as he wanted, saying that she would prepare many delicious dishes for him that day. He expressed his gratitude and began to eat heartily. While eating, he asked her whether he could use the wish he had made the previous day. She reassured him that he could use it whenever he chose. With excitement in his voice, he asked for confirmation once more, wanting to know if she would truly agree to anything he asked of her. Suddenly, Deho presented her with an updated dress and mentioned that he wanted to see her wear it, also showing her a pair of shoes and asking her to wear those too. She hesitated, recognizing the dress as Mia's. She immediately felt it wasn't suitable for her, thinking that it wouldn't fit a woman of her age. She wondered to herself what kind of wish this was and whether fulfilling it would be enough to satisfy him. Deho, however, reassured her by saying that she was a beautiful woman and he simply wanted to see her in something pretty. She found herself reflecting on the promise she had made to grant him any wish. Despite her reservations, she couldn't back out, deciding that although the request seemed small, she could manage to wear it. After a brief moment, she entered her room, changed into the dress, and came back out. Upon seeing her in the outfit, Daiho's face lit up with excitement and happiness. He complimented her, saying that she looked so pretty and youthful, almost like a college student. Though she was flattered, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous and sad. She had granted his wish, but it made her wonder how far she was willing to go in fulfilling his desires. He said no. He wished to have a yoga session with Auntie wearing that kind of dress. Auntie June got shocked, asked what he meant. He further told her that he was the only one who felt good yesterday. He knew that it wasn't enough for Auntie, so he wanted to make her feel good no matter what happened. She said that was okay and he didn't need to put in the effort. While she was still in the dress, Deho began asking her how she was feeling. She responded calmly, saying that she wasn't enjoying herself, as her only purpose was to teach him, not to take pleasure in the moment. After that conversation, Auntie June went to the laundry to wash the clothes. Suddenly, Deho appeared from behind, stopping her. He expressed his concern, saying that she shouldn't treat herself so harshly after all. She was his auntie, and she deserved kindness. He explained that his only intention was to make her happy. She replied that he didn't have to do all this for her, as she no longer found happiness in such things. But he insisted that he only wanted to satisfy her. After the resistance band session, the room was filled with the soft sound of their breathing, both slightly out of breath but visibly more relaxed. She reminded herself again and again that her only purpose was to support his growth, to teach him the right path, not to indulge in moments that felt too personal, too confusing. And still, through all her inner conflict, one thought returned. What would happen if she let go just once? If she stopped being the teacher, the caretaker, and allowed herself to simply feel without fear or restraint? She gently stopped him and told him that she couldn't continue behaving that way toward him. After all, she was his auntie. She added that she had some laundry to finish and told him it was time for him to return to his room. Deho nodded and replied that he understood, saying he felt truly happy. He mentioned that he was glad he had finally managed to make her feel happy too, and, with a playful tone, asked if she could thank him properly. Auntie June gave a small, amused smile and said softly that he had done a nice job, then added a polite thank you. Deho went back to his room, feeling cheerful. He lay on his bed, thinking that he was genuinely happy, simply because Auntie June had thanked him. He reflected on how he had been worried about whether he could make her feel any joy, but now it seemed clear to him that she truly felt happy around him. That thought filled him with quiet satisfaction. Just then, his phone rang. He answered it and heard Gobong on the other end. Gobong asked if he was busy at the moment. Deho replied curiously, wanting to know what was going on. Gobong told him that he was eating fresh watermelon with his sister, but there was too much for the two of them. He invited Deho to join them and help finish it. Deho responded that he would love to, but didn't think he could come today. In the kitchen, Auntie June was quietly washing dishes, and she happened to overhear the conversation. She listened without interrupting. On the call, Gobong asked if Deho's uncle and sisters had already left for Seoul. Deho replied that they had, and he needed to take care of the house while they were away. He said they could meet next time. Gobong joked that Deho had become too responsible to go anywhere now that he had to manage the household alone. He then hung up the phone and returned to eating watermelon with his sister. Yuhi, enjoying the fruit, commented on how delicious it was. As she chewed, her thoughts wandered to Deho. She began to wonder if next time he might be able to hear the piece she had been practicing for him. Her expression grew distant as she imagined seeing him again. Meanwhile, in Seoul, Mia and Sua were having a wonderful time. Mia was glowing with excitement, delighted by how much shopping she had managed to do. She said it felt amazing to have access to their father's wallet. It allowed her to buy so many good things. But now, the bags were heavy, and she quietly thought that if Deho had been there, he would have helped carry everything without complaint. Sua, feeling parched, told Mia that she was very thirsty and needed to stop somewhere to rest. While walking, Mia found herself thinking about how many days had already passed and how much she missed Dejo. She imagined that as soon as she returned home, he would come running straight into her arms as if he had been waiting for her all along. Back at home, Auntie June and Dejo were having a workout session together. Dejo mentioned that after the session, they would enjoy dinner. Once they finished exercising, the two sat down to eat. Auntie June asked if the meal tasted good. Deho replied enthusiastically, saying it was absolutely delicious. She told him that if he wanted more, he just had to let her know, and she would make him something even better the next day. Deho's face lit up with gratitude, and he thanked her with genuine excitement. After dinner, they each returned to their rooms to sleep. That night, Auntie June lay in bed, tossing and turning. She couldn't fall asleep. She felt unusually restless, her thoughts running in circles. She wondered why she was feeling so strange and unsettled. Then she began counting how many times she had worked out during the day, only to realize that she couldn't even remember. With a tired sigh, she thought to herself that she should just let herself rest tonight, but her mind refused to quiet down. Suddenly, he appeared in her room without warning. Auntie June froze for a moment, taken by surprise, and quietly began to wonder if she had been underestimating him all along. There was something about his expression, gentle yet persistent, that made her feel uneasy in a way she couldn't quite name. He approached her slowly and asked if he could sit beside her, his tone unusually soft. He assured her that he wouldn't stay long, that he would return to his room after a short while. Curious and slightly concerned, she asked him what had happened. Deho looked at her with a quiet kind of sadness and said that Uncle Ronald and his sister were returning the next day. Once they were back, she would no longer have time to sit with him like this. That was why, just for this one night, he wanted to spend a little more time by her side. Hearing that, Auntie June hesitated for a moment, then nodded and told him gently to go ahead and sit beside her. Deho quietly asked if he could hug her. Auntie June looked at him with slight surprise and asked why he wanted a hug. He explained softly that he simply wanted to embrace her for a moment before going to sleep. After a brief silence, she told him he could, but only for a moment. He thanked her with sincerity and then, as if trying to lighten the mood, suggested they work out again, saying it would be good for their health. She gave him a weary smile and replied that they couldn't keep doing it all the time. He looked at her, a bit more serious now, and asked why not. She asked in return whether he had only wanted to hug her just like that. He nodded and admitted that he did. He just wanted to feel close. He added that he couldn't even remember the last time he had hugged someone before going to bed. It reminded him of when he was a child living with his parents. He said he was grateful for everything now, for being able to live in this house, for having a sister, and for having a beautiful auntie who spoiled him so much. He thanked her once again for granting all the wishes he had made that day. Auntie June's heart softened. She realized just how little affection Dejo had received over the years. He had been living in this house since he was a child, and now it struck her how lonely he must have felt. She acknowledged inwardly that she had misunderstood his situation for far too long. The next morning, they sat down to have breakfast together. She asked how his computer assessment was going. He admitted that he hadn't finished it yet. Just then, the front door burst open. Mia, Sua, and Uncle Youngu had returned from Seoul. Mia walked in cheerfully and immediately asked if he had guarded the house properly. Deho rushed over and hugged her tightly. When she asked if he had missed her, he told her honestly that he had missed her so much. Then he asked if she had fun in Seoul. Sua, with her usual aloofness, shrugged and muttered that it was strange how their family missed each other so much. Mia turned to her and teased her for being so cold-hearted, claiming that Sua knew nothing about family or relationships. Sua rolled her eyes and told her not to bother her with emotional nonsense, adding sarcastically that she didn't see any tears in her own eyes. Their mother stepped forward and asked Mia if she had fun in Seoul, then looked around and asked where her husband was. Just then, their father entered the house and greeted them, asking if everything had been all right at home. Their mother said everything was fine, but stared at the luggage in disbelief, asking whether all of it belonged to Mia. Meanwhile, Mia was happily chatting with Deho, telling him she had brought him chocolate from Seoul. She suggested they go upstairs so she could give it to him, and the two of them headed off together. Mia and Deho went upstairs and started the wrestling battle. Mia was smiling as she looked around the house and said that now she could finally say she was back in a lovely home. She admitted how much she had missed it all, how the absence had been driving her crazy, and how grateful she was to feel this warmth again. Deho quietly agreed, saying he had missed it too. It truly felt good to be together again. She teased him, saying that it was completely understandable if he had been missing her a lot during those 3 days. Just then, Sua's voice echoed from downstairs, asking her dad to bring the telescope she had bought in Seoul upstairs. Their father, grunting a little, said it was heavy but agreed to carry it. He complained lightheartedly about how much it weighed. Sua urged him to hurry, playfully asking if he was already tired, since she certainly wasn't. Hearing their conversation, Mia and Dejo, who were outside and mid-workout, panicked and abruptly stopped what they were doing, hoping no one would suspect anything unusual. The next morning, Auntie June called everyone to come downstairs. She announced that since the weather was so hot, she had prepared fried noodles for everyone. The family gathered around, expressing excitement. It was everyone's favorite dish. Mia turned to her father and asked why he wasn't at work today, half-jokingly asking if the company had gone bankrupt. She added, with mock concern, that he wouldn't be unemployed now. Their mother sighed internally, wondering why her daughters were always so awkward when it came to expressing their affection. Their father chuckled and reassured them, saying the company was perfectly fine. He had only stayed home that day because he was waiting for some guests to arrive. Mia tilted her head and then guessed that it must be Uncle Song Bang from Taiwan. She wondered aloud whether Unim would be coming with him. Their mother confirmed it, explaining that Songbang and Unim were on vacation and would be staying in Korea for a few days before heading back. She then turned to Dejo and asked if he remembered Unim. At first, Dejo seemed unsure, but then a wave of recognition hit him. He smiled, saying he remembered Unim clearly. They used to get along very well. Memories flashed through his mind of the two of them spending hours playing video games together. He even remembered how Unim used to keep up with him in every game. It struck him that it had already been 6 years since their last meeting. Unim must be around 19 now, and technically, she would now have to call Deho Hyung. As they were reminiscing, the sound of the front gate opening caught everyone's attention. The guests had arrived. Everyone stood up from the table and rushed to the entrance to greet them. Uncle Song Bang cheerfully called out for everyone to come and say hello to their uncle. Sua, however, crossed her arms and muttered under her breath that she was stating in advance she wouldn't be sharing her room with Unim. Mia rolled her eyes and said Sua was not only selfish, but also proud of it. Sua insisted she was just busy writing these days and didn't want any disturbances. The front door opened and the guests entered. A cheerful young woman stepped forward, greeted them with a warm of "Good morning," and introduced herself confidently as Yoonsi. The entire family stood frozen for a moment, shocked by the unexpected turn. She turned to Deho and greeted him sweetly, calling him Oppa, much to his surprise. Deho began to question her, wondering aloud whether she truly was the same Unim he had known in the past. In response, she affirmed that indeed she was, and remarked that while he hadn't changed much, he had grown a bit more than she had. His face lit up with surprise as he observed how different she appeared, noting that she had once seemed like a baby, yet now had changed so dramatically. Unim smiled warmly and agreed, then added with a playful tone that she must have surprised him. Since moving to Taiwan, she explained, it felt like she had grown up like a storm. With that, she rushed toward Mia Nuna and greeted her enthusiastically. Mia responded with astonishment, exclaiming that Unim had grown so much. Sua politely greeted her as well, saying it was nice to meet her. Mia then asked if living abroad had been an enjoyable experience. Unim simply replied that it hadn't been anything particularly special. Mia suggested they continue the conversation after Unim had unpacked and settled in, inviting her to come inside first. Unim nodded and told her she would be relying on her for the next few days. At that moment, Sua informed Unim that Mia would be sharing her bedroom with her and would therefore be responsible for helping her adjust. Mia was visibly displeased upon hearing that and objected, asking why Sua was the one making such decisions, since they had already discussed this beforehand. Sua, however, dismissed the concern, stating that with her upcoming contest, she had little time to spare and didn't want to be involved further. Unim then turned to Mia and asked whether she disliked the idea of sleeping in the same room with her. Mia quickly reassured her, clarifying that she shouldn't misunderstand, of course. They would be sharing the room. Unim immediately hugged her in gratitude, calling her the best, and both of them laughed together. As they shared that light moment, Mia quietly tried to reassure herself that it would only be for 5 days. However, she sensed that those days might turn out to be more challenging than she expected. Later, Unim and Deho were sitting together in one of the rooms, deep in conversation. Unim told Deho that he now looked so mature, admitting she had half expected him to still be the crybaby she once knew. Deho chuckled and responded that he was already 20 years old and now old enough to take responsibility for both his words and actions. Unim acknowledged his growth and expressed her own eagerness to turn 20, explaining that she longed to become a mature woman herself, even though she understood that maturity wasn't simply a matter of age. Deho agreed and shared his thoughts, saying that it was indeed a difficult journey. When one was alone in the world, Life inevitably presented countless experiences and trials to overcome. Unim then shifted the topic, telling him that they needed to go to the beach the following day. Somewhat confused, he asked for clarification to the beach, to which she nodded enthusiastically. She explained that before arriving, she had felt a strong urge to visit the beach. That night, as Dejo lay on his bed, thoughts of Unim filled his mind. He found himself reminiscing about their shared past and marveling at how the little girl he once knew had grown so much. It struck him how quickly girls seem to mature. Meanwhile, in another room, Mia and Unim lay in their beds talking softly. Unim thanked Mia for agreeing to accompany her to the beach the next day, admitting that she would have been terribly bored had she gone alone with just Dejo. Mia replied that she couldn't possibly let two little kids go to the beach unaccompanied, adding that it was her responsibility to look after them both. Unim smiled and commented that it would have been even more fun if Sua Nuna had decided to join them. Mia, however, said she wasn't sure what Sua was doing in her room all the time, as she always claimed to be busy and likely didn't want to be disturbed. In her room, Sua sat in front of her computer, sipping juice as she concentrated on her work, clearly immersed in whatever she was doing. The following day, just as they had planned, all of them went to the beach. Unim appeared visibly thrilled, repeatedly expressing how incredible it was to be there. Mia playfully commented that child number 2 was quite excited, referring to Unim, while implying that child number 1 was Dejo. In her mind, Mia hoped they would all enjoy their time and have fun together. Their mother, however, looked somewhat exhausted. Concerned, Mia asked if something was wrong. Their mother sighed and said that while the younger ones could enjoy the outing, she didn't understand why they had brought her along, as she didn't feel she was at an age suitable for beach trips anymore. Mia nudged her mother playfully and insisted there should be an order of responsibility. She encouraged her to go change her clothes quickly, implying that everyone should take part equally. Elsewhere, Dejo was sitting under a shaded area, wondering aloud why women took so long to get ready. Mia, observing from a distance, thought to herself that, as expected, child number 1 was quicker and already prepared. Soon after, Dejo complimented Mia, telling her she looked beautiful, and added with a grin that she certainly had a good sense of style. Aunt June was growing increasingly embarrassed. She was silently questioning why she was feeling this way. It made her feel as though she were a bad woman, though she couldn't quite understand why. On the other side, Unim waited restlessly, her mind clouded with worry over the reason everyone was taking so long. She kept wondering about the reason that happened and the reason Aunt June hadn't managed to find them yet. The thought that they were already behind schedule only deepened her anxiety. Meanwhile, Mia and Dejo were having sparring training together. Mia reminded Dejo that they needed to hurry since they had to be back soon. Trying to ease his concern, she told him that everything would be fine and urged him to focus on finding a store quickly instead of wasting any more time. Aunt June, on the other hand, was following an unfamiliar man, hoping he would guide her to the right store. When they finally reached a small shop, the man told her they had arrived and suggested they go inside. He mentioned that this was the nearest convenience store around. Aunt June started feeling uncertain as she looked around and realized that neither Dejo nor Mia was there. Muttering to herself, she noted that she couldn't see the kids anywhere and assumed they might have gone to another store. Noticing her confusion, the man asked if she was looking for her children and where she had lost them. Aunt June immediately corrected him, explaining that they weren't children at all, but grown-up people in their 20s. The man nodded casually and remarked that, in that case, she had nothing to worry about. Then, heading toward the ice cream freezer, he cheerfully suggested they cool off with some ice cream and encouraged her to pick one. Aunt June declined politely, saying she was fine and that he could get one for himself instead. However, the man insisted, saying he wouldn't take no for an answer, and lightly pushed her toward the freezer, urging her to choose something quickly. Feeling uncomfortable and pressured, she hesitantly picked one while he chuckled at her reluctance. As she began eating, she tried to appear calm and commented on how hot the weather was. The man observed that she seemed to be enjoying it, and she replied that it was only because of the heat, though her nervousness was evident in her tone and expression. After a moment, the man pointed across the street toward another store and mentioned that they should go there next, explaining that it was his place. Aunt June grew tense and asked the reason they needed to go there and the reason she should follow him. Ignoring her hesitation, the man suddenly grabbed her wrist and began pulling her along, telling her she would understand once they arrived. She resisted, insisting that the store looked closed and shouting at him to stop. Still, he ignored her protests and kept dragging her forward, insisting that she had to listen to him since he had even bought her ice cream. Aunt June screamed for him to let go, demanding to know about his intentions. When they finally reached the location, the man stopped and announced that they had arrived, urging her to go inside quickly. His expression had turned dark and disturbing, his grin twisting into something unsettling and sinister. Mia and Dejo were on a mission to find a convenience store. As they walked, Dejo asked about the location of the store. Mia replied that her friends had told her there should be one nearby. Dejo, looking uneasy, told her that something didn't feel right. Mia responded casually, saying she didn't sense anything strange and suggested they continue a bit farther. He kept mentioning how unbearably hot the weather was, and as they moved through the city, he noticed that people around them were staring at them with growing curiosity. Dejo couldn't help but observe that no one else was wearing swimsuits like Mia, and he wondered why it didn't seem to bother her. The stares from the people made him increasingly nervous. As they crossed the street, they suddenly encountered a beautiful girl, one of Mia's friends. She rushed toward Mia in surprise and asked about her actions there. The girl appeared stunned by Mia's outfit and questioned her, demanding to know if she had lost her mind and the reason she was dressed like that. Mia, unfazed by the reaction, replied nonchalantly that this was the one she typically wore to the beach. Her friend pointed out that the beach wasn't even nearby and asked how Mia had ended up here. Mia looked tired and said she didn't know. She had just arrived somehow. Her friend appeared angry and told Mia she could have at least worn something more appropriate. Then, catching sight of Dejo, she asked if he was Mia's younger brother. Mia hesitated for a moment before confirming that he was Dejo. The girl turned to Dejo and asked if he remembered her from when he had visited their house a few years ago. Mia encouraged Dejo to greet her and introduced the girl as one of her friends, named Kang Juri. Dejo politely said hello, and Juri responded warmly, saying it was nice to meet him again. She added that the last time she saw him, he was still a little kid, but now he had grown so much. She asked his age, and Dejo laughed, telling her that he was already 20 years old. She complimented him, saying he was an adorable little brother. Mia then asked Juri if she knew where the convenience store was, explaining that they had been searching for it for a long time. Juri, surprised, questioned whether Mia really intended to go there dressed like that. Mia stood her ground and insisted that she would, and just wanted to know the location. Juri called her stubborn, to which Mia simply replied that they were leaving and said goodbye. Yuri said she would call her later and told her to take care, though she looked visibly confused as they parted ways. Meanwhile, Unim was becoming increasingly anxious. The others had still not returned, and her thoughts spiraled with worry. She couldn't understand the thing taking them so long and began to feel abandoned. Sadness was written all over her face as she sat waiting. Elsewhere, Mia and Dejo finally reached a convenience store. Dejo continued to express his concern about how late they were getting. Mia tried to reassure him, saying their mom could wait and that he didn't need to worry. Still, she couldn't help but wonder the reason people were staring at her so intensely. Dejo, noticing the uncomfortable situation, suggested they take a different route and suddenly grabbed Mia's hand, pulling her along. She began protesting, asking where he was taking her and the reason. He didn't answer directly, only stating that he wanted to show her a new workout session technique. They ended up at the darker side of the store, and Mia continued to question his intentions, feeling confused and uneasy. On the other side, Aunt June was becoming increasingly nervous and had begun to wonder the reason the man had brought her to that place and insisted she drink the gaseosa. She kept asking him about what they were doing there. The man responded by saying that his shop wasn't so bad and questioned the reason she seemed so worried. However, she could sense that something was wrong. She also remarked that he was the owner of a karaoke bar and questioned how such a situation had come about. The man acknowledged her thoughts and admitted that he understood her thoughts. He said that explaining it was somewhat embarrassing and that to begin with, he wasn't actually homeless. He went on to explain that the author had portrayed him as a homeless man. He continued elaborating, saying that when he had first met the artist, she had suggested that he be drawn wearing a Hawaiian shirt to make him appear cooler. But that had not been all. He explained that the artist had faced an art block, or creator's block, and had been unsure of how to draw his character. Aunt June found herself wondering the reason he was explaining all this to her, but he kept talking. He revealed that the artist hadn't understood the script, that the publication deadline was drawing near, and everything was supposed to be completed by then. In desperation, the artist had decided to portray his character as a homeless man to overcome her creative block, which had enabled her to complete her drawings without difficulty. As a result, he had ended up becoming the homeless character who smoked discarded cigarette stubs on the street. Aunt June couldn't grasp his intentions, yet he persisted. He admitted that, although he shouldn't have brought her to the karaoke bar, The true fault lay with the author who hadn't planned the scene properly. He added that it was also the artist's fault for misinterpreting the author's script and drawing recklessly. When it came to his character, he emphasized he was extremely particular about the details. It had always been this way, even before he had appeared in the webtoon series. He carried on, stating that both the author and artist were experts in their respective fields and apologized for everything that had happened. He expressed his intention to do better and offered his sincerest apologies. He then asked her if things were all right now and declared that from now on, he was simply the boss of a karaoke bar who wore a Hawaiian shirt. As he leaned toward her, he asked about her thoughts now that she better understood his situation. Aunt June gave a gentle smile and replied that she still didn't know about his words. Suddenly, the man picked up a microphone and handed it to her, saying that enough had been said and they should now enjoy the moment. He encouraged her to sing a song, reminding her that they were there to unwind. Aunt June, however, felt confused by his sudden change in topic and didn't understand the reason he was now focusing on singing. Elsewhere, during their workout session in the abandoned area, Dejo and Mia had been discussing how few people were around. Dejo mentioned that they needed to complete everything quickly. Back at the karaoke bar, Aunt June had started to sing. The man was so impressed by her performance that he told her she was an excellent singer. He appeared shy and confessed that he felt a bit embarrassed. He then announced that she was qualified and could work as a companion at his bar. He explained that whenever customers arrived, she could assist them by singing songs they chose and even dancing for them. It would be a mutually beneficial arrangement, he said, where she could earn money and have fun at the same time. She asked him if he was offering her a part-time job, and then explained that she didn't have enough time due to household chores and taking care of her children. Suddenly, the man handed her a business card and asked whether she really wanted to continue doing such depressing things. He told her to call him if she ever changed her mind. He added that his bar had seen a decline in sales due to the lack of a good companion, and when he saw her, he had thought she might be the one to change that. He acknowledged that there had been some misunderstandings, but said he hoped they could see each other again. They two shook hands, and then he asked if she knew the way out. He instructed her to exit through the back door, as the main door hadn't been opened yet. Laughing, he said that he was returning to his duties as the boss. Aunt June then began heading toward the back door. Meanwhile, Mia was standing nearby with Dejo and had begun to wonder whether someone was approaching. On the other side, Aunt June was forcefully pulling the door in an attempt to open it. As the door swung open, the two parties came face to face. Seeing Aunt June, Mia exclaimed to Dejo that they were in big trouble. Mia's mother was on the other side of the door, asking Mia about her actions and the reason she wouldn't open it. At that moment, her mother kept attempting to push the door open. Mia told her that it was broken and asked her to wait a little longer. Her mother continued insisting, questioning the reason Mia kept holding the door and whether she could simply let her out. Dejo, confused by the situation, asked Mia about it. She responded by saying that their mother was behind the door. He was startled and asked in disbelief if she meant Aunt June. Meanwhile, Aunt June kept calling out, demanding to know about Mia's actions and the reason she wouldn't open the door. She said she had been waiting for quite a while and urged Mia to open it immediately. She asked the reason Mia couldn't just unlock it. Growing frustrated, Aunt June began to push the door more forcefully, complaining that it was stiff and hard to move. Mia, trying to calm the situation, pleaded with her mother not to open the door. But her mother was getting increasingly anxious and asked the reason Mia was behaving like that, questioning her refusal to open it. Mia asked her if she was in a rush, to which her mother replied that she was feeling fine, but then she flipped the question back, asking Mia whether she was okay and asked about her presence there. At that point, Aunt June began thinking that perhaps Mia had locked herself in the bathroom. She glanced toward it and noticed that it was indeed locked. Mia promised she would open the door soon, but asked her mother to wait just a little longer. Aunt June started suspecting that her daughter was losing her mind. Still, she kept demanding that Mia open the door, while Mia insisted that her mother trust her and just wait a bit more. Finally, Mia opened the door. Her mother immediately asked if she was all right. Mia explained that she had just finished dealing with an emergency, and then questioned her mother about the reason she was even there. She told her that right after she exited the store, she had suddenly needed to pee, so she had found the abandoned place nearby. Her mother, clearly concerned, asked the reason she had chosen such a place and whether she was finished. Mia reassured her that she felt better now. Then Mia turned the question around and asked her mother about her presence there. Caught off guard, Aunt June began to panic and started making excuses, saying that she had gone out to find the two of them, but due to the heat and fatigue, she had decided to rest there for a while. Mia asked if she had really come just to chill in that abandoned place. Her mother awkwardly confirmed and said that everything was fine now and that they should get going since Unim had been waiting for a very long time. Dejo then entered the scene, asking whether Aunt June was alone. Seeing him, Aunt June grew more anxious and asked him where he had been. Mia quickly covered for him, saying that she had asked him to stay nearby and stand guard so that no one could see her. Deho laughed and confirmed her story. Their mother then asked about the reason for being so late. Mia explained that she had run into Juri along the way and that they had ended up talking, which delayed her return. Her mother was surprised and asked about Juri, questioning the reason she never visited them at home. Mia replied that it was Juri's choice and that she couldn't force her to come over often. After that, all of them began walking toward the beach. The sun was growing hotter, and as they walked, Deho's thoughts were entirely focused on Mia Nuna. All of them were standing on the footpath, waiting for the traffic light to change. Auntie June found herself wondering the reason it was taking so long for the light to turn green. As soon as the signal turned green, they all began walking, except for him. Mia looked back at him and asked the reason he was still standing there, urging him to hurry up. Only then did he begin to walk. Auntie June was lost in her thoughts, unable to express her feelings about the situation. It seemed as though she was overthinking everything. When they finally arrived at the beach, Mia expressed relief that they had reached. She mentioned how difficult it had been to find a mini market in the area and how long it had taken. Unim, who had been waiting, told them that they had gone missing somewhere and asked how much longer they intended to keep her waiting. She added that she had even thought they had left her behind. They all apologized to her. Deho offered an apology to Auntie June for his earlier mistake, to which she responded that it was all right and that they should just forget about it. She reminded him that the girls were waiting and they should focus on them now. Mia and Unim began playing volleyball together, visibly excited and enjoying the game. From a distance, Deho watched them, cheering them on. He remarked to himself that Mia Nuna was as good as he had expected. Suddenly, the ball hit him directly in the face. Mia rushed over with a concerned expression and asked if he was okay. Laughing, he assured her that he was fine and that it didn't hurt at all. He joked that perhaps it happened because of his own stubbornness. Auntie June also laughed and encouraged them to continue playing. She then said she was going to change her clothes and would be back soon. Mia, puzzled, asked her mother the reason she was going to change when she hadn't even gone swimming. Her mother replied that she was simply tired and didn't feel like swimming, which was the reason she was going to change. Deho found himself staring at her. Meanwhile, Auntie June was silently wondering whether it was really so difficult to enjoy moments like these at her age. Deho approached her, clearly wanting to say something. When she asked him about the situation, he told her that he just wanted to talk for a moment. Without another word, he gently took her hand and began leading her somewhere. Auntie June, surprised, asked where they were going and pointed out that they didn't need to go behind the rocks, especially since Unim and Mia were waiting for them. She reminded him that she had told the others she was only heading to the bathroom. Deho apologized and told her not to worry, that everything would be fine. He just wanted to do a workout session there with her. She began questioning him, trying to understand the reason he was acting this way. He admitted that he wanted to spend time playing with Mia and Unim, but found himself unable to focus because thoughts of her body and how good it felt kept occupying his mind. As he spoke, he gently placed his hand on her face. She began to rationalize the situation in her mind, thinking that perhaps all of this was happening because he hadn't done a workout session in a while. Maybe, she thought, he was struggling to play with Mia and Unim due to a lack of regular physical activity. She concluded that she simply had to accept the circumstances and take full responsibility for this boy's needs. Then, she asked him the reason he wanted to do cardio training there, at that particular place. He replied that he just wanted to complete the session quickly. She was taken aback, struggling to believe that he could even suggest doing such a thing on the beach. Both of them started doing sparring training in partnership. She began to reflect on the strange emotions welling up inside her. His affectionate presence lingered around her, and her thoughts turned to how everything had turned out. Perhaps all of it had driven them toward that spontaneous decision to do a workout session there. Afterwards, Deho glanced at Auntie June and commented that she looked exhausted. She told him to let her rest for a moment, and he agreed quietly. Not long after, everyone gathered to leave the beach and head home. Despite the earlier tension, Mia found herself reflecting positively on the day. Even with the problems they had faced, she felt she had enjoyed herself. Her mother, however, seemed concerned and asked whether Mia wasn't planning to change before heading home. Mia responded casually, saying she intended to stay dressed as she was, claiming that she liked to live freely. She added that there was no need to worry since they only needed to catch a bus. Her mother pointed out that she was wearing a bikini, questioning whether she didn't feel embarrassed. Mia challenged her mother in return, reminding her that she had once walked around the city in similar attire. Eventually, Mia threw a shirt over herself and asked whether that was acceptable now. Her mother nodded, saying it was fine. The bus arrived, and they all boarded. Auntie June sat quietly, her thoughts circling Mia's slightly irritable mood. As they rode along, Mia mentioned how tired she was from all the playing and said she intended to sleep. Dejo told her to rest well and promised to wake her when they arrived. Mia smiled and said she trusted her little number one, then drifted off to sleep. As the bus rumbled along, everyone else eventually fell asleep, except Dejo. He glanced around, noting how quickly everyone had dozed off, and realized he was growing bored. His eyes drifted to Mia, and he found himself thinking about how beautiful she looked. He didn't want to disturb her by touching her, but with the bus nearly empty, he felt tempted. He rationalized that she probably wouldn't be upset with him and gently brushed his hand near her, lost in the moment and the way she felt. But as he lingered in his thoughts, he suddenly noticed someone standing in front of him. It was Gobong, facing him squarely in the aisle of the bus. Panic surged through Dejo. Gobong questioned Dejo's presence with her. Dejo, still reeling, struggled to understand how Bong had even appeared there. Gobong looked at Dejo and asked where he had been lately. Dejo gave a nervous laugh and explained that he had gone to the beach with his aunt and cousins, and now he was on his way back home. Gobong raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued, and repeated the word beach, as if trying to confirm his words. Then, with a knowing smile, he joked that Dejo must have had a lot of fun there. From behind Gobong, Yuhi stepped forward, clearly curious, and asked if he had really gone to the beach. Dejo, caught off guard by her sudden appearance, blushed slightly and confirmed it again, adding that he had been with his family. Yuhi sighed and said she had been wanting to go to the beach, her voice hinting at disappointment. Their conversation stirred Mia from her light sleep. As she opened her eyes and sat up, Yuhi greeted her with a teasing tone, calling her Lady Cha Mia. Mia's expression immediately shifted. She disliked being addressed in such a formal or mocking way, and her irritation was evident. Auntie June, also awoken by the chatter, recognized Gobong's voice and sat up as well. She greeted him warmly and asked the reason he hadn't visited lately. She reminded him that if he came by, she would cook something special for him. Gobong smiled politely, touched by her kindness. Mia joined the conversation, reminding Gobong that she had once promised to teach him how to drink when he turned 20. She teased him for not showing up since then. Yuhi, standing nearby, didn't seem too happy with the familiarity between them. Gobong gave an awkward laugh and replied that she could teach him the next time he visited. Mia grinned and said that was perfect, adding casually that she and Dejo were planning to have a small drink together in her room. Her tone was light, but it made Yuhi shift uncomfortably. Just then, Unim joined in, looking at Gobong and Yuhi and asking if they were Deho's friends. Deho turned to her with a smile and introduced Gobong as his best friend. Gobong greeted her warmly and said it was nice to meet her, adding that Deho often talked about her. Unim raised an eyebrow and asked if that was really true. Gobong nodded and continued, saying Deho often mentioned her and even showed off about her living in Taiwan. Surprised, Unim looked at Deho, who quickly stepped in, urging Gobong not to share everything. The playful banter made everyone smile. Eventually, Gobong and Yuhi stepped off the bus. They waved goodbye, and Deho leaned out of the window, calling his farewell. Inside the bus, the group settled back into lighthearted conversation. Deho had Mia's phone in his hands, trying to unlock it. Unim laughed and teased him for being so clumsy with it. After a few attempts, he finally unlocked it, and they continued teasing each other as the bus rolled on. Back at home, Auntie June began preparing dinner while the girls rested in their room. Deho was in his own room and Sua quietly read a book in his. The house was calm as night fell. Late at night, Mia slipped into the kitchen, feeling thirsty. She reached for a bottle of water and began drinking. A moment later, Deho appeared behind her. She asked if he was thirsty too. He replied that he wasn't. What he really wanted was to resume the cardio training they hadn't finished. Mia looked at him with a mix of amusement and seriousness, telling him that it wasn't the right time or place. She reminded him they should wait until Unim had gone. The next morning, Mia was brushing her teeth in the bathroom when Unim appeared with her bags, ready to leave. The whole family came to see her off, wishing her luck. Sua advised her to study hard, though the comment seemed to annoy Unim. Before leaving, Unim turned to Dejo and said she'd return when he was a bit older. She told him she'd be waiting and that she hoped to see him next year. With that, she left the house. Back inside, the family returned to their rooms. Dejo approached Mia again, saying he had waited long enough and could hardly contain himself anymore. He looked at her, hopeful, as if seeking both permission and understanding. Both of them began the sparring training partnership. Dejo mentioned that it was the first time they were doing it since the beach. Mia responded by welcoming him back to the training again. Dejo admitted that he had missed doing it with her, calling her the best. Mia replied that he was also the best. As they continued, Mia started thinking that once again Dejo was doing whatever he wanted, and that now, this time she was losing her mind, feeling that the whole situation was becoming disturbingly overwhelming for her. During the cardio training, Mia's phone rang. Dejo pointed out that her phone was ringing. Mia picked up the call, and it turned out to be Juri. Juri informed her that she was coming to Mia's home. Mia, attempting to make an excuse, said that it was too sunny outside and that she could not be out. However, Juri insisted that she not try to refuse, claiming that she knew there was no real problem with her coming by. Later that same day, in the evening, Juri arrived at their home. She encountered Auntie June at the door, who was busy cleaning the floor. Juri greeted Auntie June warmly. Auntie June recognized her and responded, expressing surprise that it was Juri and remarking that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. She asked where Juri had been all this time. Juri responded by complimenting her, saying that she still looked gorgeous. Auntie June was left speechless and started blushing at the compliment. Juri then noticed Mia on the stairs. Mia, with a tone that lacked enthusiasm, acknowledged her arrival. Juri, full of excitement, presented Mia with a bag and pointed out that it contained something she liked most. Mia gave her a cold expression and told her that she already had some alcohol, so it wasn't needed. Juri appeared embarrassed for a brief moment. At that point, Dejo entered the scene and greeted Juri. Juri asked him where he had been. Juri inquired whether Dejo would be interested in joining them for drinks. Before he could answer, Mia responded on his behalf, assuring Juri that he would indeed join, and remarked that it would be his first time. She then turned to Dejo and asked if she should call Gobong. He nodded in agreement, recalling that Mia had mentioned previously that she intended to teach Gobong how to drink. Juri, curious, asked who Gobong was. Mia explained that he was Dejo's best friend. Juri responded approvingly, saying that it would be more enjoyable to have additional people present. Mia accepted the suggestion and said she would invite him if Juri wanted this. She instructed Dejo to call Gobong, to which he agreed. At that moment, Auntie June interjected, asking if they were planning to have dinner first. Mia, sounding dismissive, questioned her mother's reasoning and pointed out that since they would be drinking all night, dinner was unnecessary. She added that they would simply snack on some Doritos. Her response visibly disappointed Auntie June, who appeared saddened by her daughter's dismissive tone. Meanwhile, Sua asked Mia whether she was essentially warning her that things might get noisy in her room that evening. She further asked if they truly intended to drink all night. Mia confirmed this, suggesting that Sua use headphones while she drew or watched a movie. Sua mentioned that she planned to use the new telescope that had recently been gifted to her. Juri offered a polite greeting to Sua, which Sua pointedly ignored. Mia told Juri not to take it personally and said Sua was merely trying to appear aloof. As Sua walked past Juri, she asked coldly whether she even knew her, then added that she needed to pass through. Juri, taken aback, asked if Sua truly did not recognize her, and remarked that Sua had been prettier when she was younger. Mia urged Juri to leave Sua alone and invited her into the room, stating that they would spend the entire night drinking until dawn. Elsewhere, Sua was outside attempting to use the telescope. She struggled to comprehend the instructions in the manual. She knocked on the door in an effort to re-enter the house, but Mia, from inside, refused to open it and instead called out a curt good night. During this moment, Gobong arrived at the house and greeted Sua with a good night. Sua asked who he was. Gobong introduced himself, stating that he was Gobong. Sua replied that she didn't recognize the name, and he explained that it was the name his grandfather used to call him. Later that night, the group gathered and began their drinking session. Before they started, Juri asked again if Mia had indeed invited Gobong. Gobong then entered the room and elaborated that his grandfather had given him that name in hopes that he would rise above everyone else. Mia laughed, remarking on how time had passed and how unexpected it was to find themselves drinking with the younger generation. Dejo commented that beer would always be his preference. Mia advised him that he needed to build his tolerance and become accustomed to drinking. She reminded him that as a young man, he needed to maintain a cool demeanor. She then suggested they raise a toast to support him in his effort. Juri enthusiastically agreed. The group clinked their glasses together in celebration. Juri asked about her words again. Mia responded vaguely, and Dejo clarified that it had been Nuna who made the toast. Mia laughed again and admitted she had made it up, simply to add a bit of fun. The group then decided that whoever finished their drink last would be labeled the loser. As the evening progressed and the drinking continued, Dejo began to feel dizzy. He commented that he thought he had fallen asleep, then looked around and realized that everyone else had already dozed off. Quietly and gently, he moved closer to Mia. Dejo mumbled that he was far too drunk and, in his intoxicated state, confessed that he now wanted to do some sparring partnership with Mia. She asked him in a quiet but firm tone about his actions. Dejo, caught in the moment, began to praise her softly. He told her that he always felt incredibly good whenever he was with her, and being close to her made him feel at peace. His voice was sincere, almost vulnerable. Mia, suddenly realizing that she had dozed off without meaning to, sat up with a jolt, visibly shocked by the fact that she had fallen asleep while things were still happening around her. Dejo, gently but eagerly, asked her if they could continue the cardio training they had started earlier. Mia, however, looked around and reminded him that with everyone else sleeping nearby, it wasn't appropriate to do such a thing. He quickly responded, saying that he had checked. Everyone was indeed asleep, and the room was completely dark. He added that no one would notice or even wake up. Despite his insistence, Mia shook her head and sighed. She said she was feeling too sleepy, too tired to continue anything, and just wanted to get some rest. He nodded reluctantly, understanding her refusal. As Dejo lay there, he noticed Juri shifting slightly in her sleep, and to his surprise, Gobong was lying quite close to her. A strange feeling crept over him, unease mixed with a protective instinct. It bothered him to see how close they were. The thought struck him that he couldn't allow Gobong to accidentally touch Juri in such a vulnerable state. His mind raced for a moment before deciding further next. He got up slowly, careful not to disturb anyone, and walked over to where Juri was resting. Gently, he pulled a blanket over her, making sure she was properly covered. Then, without a second thought, he lay down between her and Gobong, effectively placing himself as a barrier between them. A quiet sense of pride rose within him, and he felt as though he had accomplished something noble, protecting Juri from even the slightest unintentional contact with Gobong. As he lay there, however, Dejo couldn't help but glance at Juri. Her peaceful, sleeping face stirred something unfamiliar in him. He started to feel something soft, something warm. For a brief moment, his heart wavered. He began wondering about his feelings. But just as quickly as it came, he dismissed the thought, firmly telling himself that he couldn't think about her that way. He wasn't supposed to feel this way toward Juri. Sua was outside the house, completely engrossed with her new telescope. She was adjusting its settings and exploring the view of the night sky, quietly pleased with herself for having made a worthwhile purchase. The telescope felt like a small victory, something just for her. Meanwhile, inside the house, Dejo was lying uncomfortably beside the sleeping Juri. He stared at her peaceful face, thoughts swirling through his mind. He wondered how he had even ended up in such an awkward situation. As he looked at Juri, he questioned whether she was truly asleep or just pretending. The entire moment felt like a compromised scenario, and it left him feeling conflicted and helpless. He thought to himself how hopeless everything felt, especially since Mia and Nuna had refused to continue their sparring partnership earlier. That rejection lingered in his chest. He tried to wriggle out from between Juri and Gobong, hoping to quietly remove himself from the situation, but his efforts were futile. Gobong was lying directly behind him, and any movement backward would risk waking him up. Trapped in that narrow space, Dejo's frustration and discomfort grew. Just when he felt like he couldn't take it any longer, Juri suddenly stirred and opened her eyes. She looked at him, still half asleep, and asked about the situation. Caught off guard and deeply embarrassed, Dejo turned his gaze away, hoping she wouldn't misunderstand the situation. Then, with a hint of mischief in her voice, Juri asked him if he wanted to do a workout session with her. Dejo immediately denied it, flustered, saying that wasn't his intention. But Juri cut him off, her expression serious yet oddly calm. She told him not to say a word, that this situation needed to be resolved, and that it was a serious matter. Without waiting for his response, she stood up and told him to follow her. Still unsure of her words, Dejo got up and followed behind her. They both walked into one of the rooms. the tension between them building with each step. Once inside, he looked around and asked her about their presence there. Juri, with a composed yet playful expression, told him that this was where she was going to show him the proper technique for cardio training. She asked him directly if he wanted to learn the cardio session the right way. Dejo, still trying to process everything, nodded and replied that yes, he did want to learn. Juri smiled and said that in that case, they should hurry up and begin the class. He found himself deep in thought, feeling guilty for disturbing Juri's sleep. A part of him believed he deserved punishment for being so careless, for allowing himself to end up in such an awkward situation. He silently asked himself about his next plan. His thoughts were interrupted when Juri looked at him and declared that she was going to teach him more cardio techniques. Puzzled and slightly anxious, he asked about her further plans. In response, she gave him a teasing smile and said he had nothing to worry about, that he was about to face the best punishment he'd ever had. Her choice of words threw him off. He repeated internally, trying to understand. Her tone, however, didn't carry any malice. She playfully remarked that he always showed his innocent side, and that receiving punishment from her would be more of a reward than a consequence. Without waiting for his reaction, Juri began leading the session. She moved with energy and confidence, saying she intended to give him proper lessons, real techniques that he needed to learn with focus. She insisted he concentrate, reminding him that only with focus could he learn everything she had to teach. Meanwhile, Dejo tried to keep up, still somewhat dazed by the situation. He thought to himself that she had probably drunk too much, which was the reason she seemed so flushed and animated. Yet, as the session continued, both of them gradually started to enjoy it. He was beginning to feel a surprising sense of energy. The more they engaged in the sparring partnership, the more he felt invigorated. He remarked with a grin that he was actually feeling stronger thanks to this session. Meanwhile, on the other side of the house, Mia woke up suddenly, driven by thirst. Still groggy, she muttered that she needed water. As consciousness returned, she was startled to realize that she was lying there completely unclothed. Panic flashed across her face as she scanned the room. Dejo and Gobong were still asleep beside her, but Juri was nowhere to be found. A sense of unease crept in, and she began to wonder where Juri could have gone. Mia started calling out, asking aloud if Juri was nearby. She then approached the bathroom door and knocked. From inside, Juri responded, saying she was in the middle of taking a shower. Mia clenched her jaw and told her to hurry, explaining that she needed to use the bathroom. Her irritation grew as she grumbled internally about how not only had Juri stayed over uninvited, but now she was even monopolizing the shower. The next morning, Dejo and Gobong sat together in front of a computer. Gobong was patiently teaching Dejo how to use it, demonstrating how simple it was. Just insert a disk and click here, and the system would turn on. Dejo followed along, nodding in understanding. Juri entered the room shortly after and announced that she needed to leave. Dejo looked surprised and asked if she was already heading home. She walked closer to him, leaned in, and whispered in his ear not to forget that she, his Nuna, would be treating him to a delicious meal the next day, and in any circumstances, he just had to show up. Dejo nodded and assured her that he would definitely be there. With a wave and a playful tone, Juri said her goodbyes to everyone, promising to see them next time. As she turned to go, Mia appeared and casually asked Juri whether she had been working out recently, remarking that she looked very healthy. Caught off guard, Juri chuckled and replied that it wasn't really like that. Dejo, meanwhile, admired Juri's appearance, commenting aloud that she looked beautiful. He then turned to Gobong and asked for his opinion, to which Gobong responded without hesitation that his own sister was prettier. Dejo laughed and agreed, saying that yes, Gobong's sister was indeed very pretty. Then, as his mind wandered, Dejo realized he hadn't seen Yuhi since that time, and the thought lingered with a strange sense of distance. The following day, Dejo went to meet Juri as he had promised. When she saw him, Juri remarked that he was quite early. He chuckled and replied that he had just arrived. She smiled and said it seemed like he was the kind of boy who kept his promises. Checking her phone, Juri continued the conversation, mentioning that they were going to have a delicious meal that day, and asked if he wanted to go somewhere nice. Dejo stammered at the suggestion of a nice place, while Juri added with a bright smile that today's outing would be full of fun, like a joyful class session. On the other side, Sua was walking with a bottle of juice in her hand, thinking that the weather was unbearably hot and she needed to reach home as soon as possible so she could enjoy reading her book in the comfort of cool air. Meanwhile, Dejo and Juri had gone to a hotel and were enjoying a delicious meal. Juri was asking him if he wanted her to buy something even more delicious. She added that she really liked donkatsu. Dejo responded that the meal they had was more than enough for him. Juri thought to herself that it was amusing how he was only focused on pork chops. After finishing their meal, they stood up and walked out of the hotel together. As they crossed the road, Dejo commented that he had eaten very well and asked where they were heading next. Juri reminded him that she had told him earlier that they were going to have fun together that day. Dejo repeated her words and asked if they were going to an arcade. As he took her hand, he urged her to hurry up, saying it would be fun. Juri appeared hesitant and asked him to slow down. At the same time, Sua was at a bookstore browsing through several books. She thought that reading the one she had just picked up would be really enjoyable. Juri and Dejo arrived at the arcade and played several shooting games together, enjoying themselves thoroughly. As they exited the arcade, Sua happened to be crossing the same street and was shocked to see them together. She wondered about Deho's presence with Juri. Juri and Dejo continued walking until they reached a certain building. Dejo asked about this place. Juri replied that he had probably never seen that place before and asked if he wanted to go somewhere nicer instead. Dejo remarked that it seemed like the kind of place where only older people went. Juri assured him that it was fine and told him that he was old enough now and that this would be his first experience visiting such a place. Sua, who had been following them discreetly, continued to watch them from a distance. She was extremely shocked to see them heading into that building and could hardly believe the scene she was witnessing. Inside, Juri and Dejo entered a motel room. Dejo looked around and commented on how beautiful the room was. He said that this was what motel rooms looked like and noted that the room was spacious and exclusively for the two of them. He added that they could do whatever they wanted while they were there. Juri responded that it was indeed very nice and asked him about his thoughts on it. Dejo replied that it was really good. Juri continued speaking, explaining that whenever couples came to that place, they were free to engage in as many activities as they liked. She said that since they were already there, he could now have his first experience. Dejo asked if they could do a cardio session there. Juri teased him, saying that he had been pretending to be mature earlier, which had made their visit possible. Dejo quickly clarified that it wasn't like that and admitted that this would be his first time exercising in a motel. Outside the motel, Sua stood restlessly, her brows furrowed with concern as her eyes remained fixed on the entrance. The sun blazed down mercilessly, but her mind was far too occupied to care. She pulled out her phone to check the time for the third time in a few minutes and sighed inwardly, noting how much time had passed since they went in. Still, there was no sign of them coming out. A knot tightened in her chest as she silently questioned if the two had really entered the motel together, as a couple. The thought felt absurd, almost surreal, but she couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. None of it made any sense, and her thoughts spun in circles trying to understand. Inside the motel room, Dejo and Juri were engrossed in a workout session. Dejo, lying back slightly breathless, remarked that the session was taking unusually long. Juri, however, simply smiled and commented on how incredibly good she felt. Dejo began to apply more techniques he had learned, moving with a sort of eager energy. He told her that she could do whatever she liked, his tone light, trying to match her playfulness. Meanwhile, Sua remained just outside, her patience fraying. She was starting to lose her composure, fuming under the hot sun. She could feel the sweat clinging to her skin, her clothes beginning to stick, and the heat only added to her irritation. Her thoughts were clouded by confusion and frustration. She muttered inwardly about how she had ended up standing out there in the first place, uncertain of the thing that was exactly unfolding inside that building. The longer she waited, the more restless she became. A part of her didn't even want to imagine what was happening in that room, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Back in the room, Juri and Dejo seemed completely immersed in each other's company. The two laughed, smiled, and exchanged playful remarks between moments of exertion. They were clearly enjoying themselves. Despite the situation, there was an undeniable ease and happiness between them, as though nothing else existed beyond the walls of that room. Sua, however, continued to stand outside, the sun scorching above her and her thoughts spiraling. The idea suddenly struck her. She was thinking whether they had kissed. Her stomach turned at the possibility. She shook her head, trying to brush the thought away, silently insisting that there was no way Juri would have done something like that. But doubt lingered. The sun felt harsher with every minute that passed. Her hair clung to her neck, sweat dripped down her temples, and she felt completely drained. Still, despite everything, she stood there, unable to walk away, hoping desperately that she had misunderstood everything. Sua stood quietly in front of the motel, thoughts swirling in her mind. She began questioning herself, wondering the reason she was even there in the first place. It had been quite a while since she arrived, and now she felt completely exhausted. She thought bitterly that if she continued like this, she might just collapse under the heat. There wasn't anything left to confirm anymore. Just the fact that the two of them had entered a motel together was enough. Her skin felt sticky and uncomfortable from all the sweating, and she told herself she desperately needed a cold shower to cool down and wash away the discomfort. Meanwhile, inside the motel room, Dejo and Juri lay sprawled across the bed, completely worn out from their intense sparring partnership. Juri said with a tired laugh that she was going to take a shower. Dejo, however, still seemed energetic and said that he wanted to continue exercising. Without hesitation, they dove right back into their playful and exhausting activities. Later that evening, Mia was calling everyone down for dinner. Sua and Mia came downstairs together, heading toward the dining room. As they walked, Mia casually asked Sua if she could borrow her laptop. Sua, still feeling a bit irritated from earlier, quickly responded that she didn't want to lend it. The two reached the table just as Aunt June asked about Deho's whereabouts, wondering why he hadn't come home yet. Sua, alert at the question, glanced around and repeated curiously that he still hadn't arrived. Just then, Dejo entered the house, shouting that he was back. Aunt June turned and smiled, asking if he had just arrived, to which he replied yes, addressing her warmly. Mia, noticing his appearance, asked where he had been, saying he looked so worn out and hadn't even called her. Dejo brushed it off, saying he had been with some friends. Mia, suspicious, pointed out that he didn't have many friends, just Gobong. She then changed the topic, commenting on how delicious the food smelled. Dejo cheerfully echoed her, calling out to Aunt June about how good everything looked. With that, the entire family settled around the table and began enjoying their dinner wholeheartedly. During the meal, Uncle Yongu turned to Sua and asked if she liked the telescope he had bought for her. Sua responded that she had been using it and thought it was quite good. Pleased, Uncle Yongu reminded her about the summer meteor shower that night, telling her not to make him worry. Sua reassured him, saying she needed to take her time since the telescope was heavy. Her mother interjected, expressing concern about her climbing a mountain to see the shower, asking if it was really necessary. She suggested Sua could just watch it from their backyard. Sua, visibly frustrated, insisted that it wouldn't be the same. She argued that to see it clearly, she had to go to the summit. She emphasized how rare this opportunity was, something that only occurred once in a decade, and said she was willing to take the risk. Her passion for astronomy shone through her voice. Her mother asked how she planned to carry such a heavy telescope on her own, reminding her that her father wouldn't be able to help since he had to work. At that point, Dejo joined the conversation and offered to help. He said he'd be happy to assist Sua if she needed him. He also mentioned that he was interested in seeing the meteor shower himself. Aunt June asked if he was really serious, to which he replied confidently that he was. He smiled and added that he was getting stronger now, implying that he could handle the task. He looked toward Sua and said that if she didn't mind, he would gladly help carry the telescope. He repeated the question, asking if she was okay with him coming along. After a moment of pause, Sua agreed, saying that he could come and help her. That night, Aunt June lay in her bed, thoughts of Deho circling in her mind. She felt a growing concern about him and reflected that helping him with his issues was beginning to feel more exhausting than she had anticipated. Yet she also realized that she hadn't been supporting him consistently for a long time. She told herself that perhaps now was the time to offer help more frequently. There was only one path left for her to support him, she thought. She admitted to herself that she shouldn't overthink it. After all, she had been the one who initiated everything, including those secret workout sessions. She couldn't abandon him now, especially during the hardest times in his life. She resolved to make a genuine effort to show him affection so that he wouldn't feel alone. With quiet determination, she promised herself that she would look after him in any situation. The next morning, it dawned brightly. Deho and Sua were having a lighthearted conversation. Sua commented that it was a wonderful day, and Deho agreed, saying that the weather was perfect to catch the meteor shower. The two of them prepared to head toward the mountain, bidding farewell to their mother and promising to return soon. Before leaving, Deho turned to Mia and warned her not to enter his room while he was away. Aunt June asked how much weight he was carrying in his bag, reminding him that since he had a telescope with him, it wouldn't be easy. Deho laughed and admitted that it was a bit heavy, but necessary if they wanted a clear view of the meteor shower. Sua added that they also couldn't forget the sleeping bags if they were planning to camp out. Mia scoffed, questioning who would bring sleeping bags in the middle of summer unless they had been watching too many survival shows. Sua dismissed her with a sharp tone, telling her not to interfere, and that it was pointless trying to reason with someone as stubborn as her. She muttered that it was all a waste of time. Deho chimed in cheerfully, claiming that he was super strong and could carry everything without any issues. With that, they set off. Sua turned back to say goodbye, assuring her mother she would be back the next day. Aunt June advised her to help Deho if he looked too tired, while Mia teasingly commented that Sua was being a little too gentle with her little brother. Sua and Dejo finally reached the base of the mountain and began their climb. As they ascended, Sua remarked how incredibly hot it was and said it really felt like summer now. Dejo agreed, but pointed out that the scattered clouds provided occasional shade, which made the climb a bit more bearable. Sua still grumbled that whether there were clouds or not, the hike was still exhausting. Deho encouraged her, saying they were almost there, and that once they reached the top, they'd be able to enjoy the meteor shower. But suddenly, he started to stumble as fatigue hit him. Sua quickly came to his side, offering her hand and telling him to be careful. He smiled and reassured her, saying they just needed to climb a little farther. After a tiring trek, they finally reached the summit. Sua gasped at the breathtaking landscape, saying she had never seen anything so beautiful. Deho agreed, though he added that the journey had been exhausting. Sua scolded him for bringing so much unnecessary gear, teasing that he always made things more complicated than they had to be. He admitted that he just needed a little rest and he'd be fine. She suddenly looked up and asked the reason the clouds had suddenly turned so dark. A trace of panic entered her voice as she worried aloud that if it started raining, they wouldn't be able to see anything. Deho tried to reassure her, saying it was just a single dark cloud and that the forecast had predicted clear skies. But before they could make any further observations, it began to rain heavily. Deho looked up at the sky in disbelief and exclaimed that it was so sudden and intense. He muttered with frustration that he had waited so long for this moment. As the rain poured harder, he started to panic, worried they wouldn't be able to continue. He looked at Sua and pointed out that she would be soaked through if they didn't figure something out. Turning to him with concern, she asked about the further plans. Deho looked at Sua and admitted that he didn't think the rain would stop anytime soon. Sua nodded in agreement, though uncertainty clouded her face as she asked about their next plan. Deho pointed out that there was no shelter around and suggested they begin their descent to find cover. When she asked about his intentions, he replied that they needed to go back and search for a place to wait out the storm. He assured her that everything would be fine soon and urged her not to worry. Sua, however, couldn't help feeling anxious. She questioned the reason all these unfortunate events seemed to happen to her, expressing frustration at how much effort she had put into the trip. Deho calmly explained that they had no choice and that the weather had simply taken an unexpected turn. Sua added that there was no way she could have known it would rain in such an uncommon location. Deho remained focused on the immediate problem, emphasizing the urgency of finding shelter. Then, as they moved along the path, he suddenly spotted a cave nearby. Pointing toward it, he said that it could provide them with much-needed cover. Sua, now visibly shivering, commented on how cold it had become, and Deho guided her inside the cave, remarking that she had already done a lot. Inside, she noted that it was still cold despite being out of the rain. Deho theorized that the dampness might be making it worse and warned that staying in their wet clothes could lead to hypothermia. She began to panic slightly, wondering aloud the reason she felt so cold just from being in the cave. Deho offered a solution that the sleeping bag he brought along was waterproof and would keep her warm. He suggested that she remove her wet clothes before getting inside the bag, prompting her to react with irritation and disbelief. She snapped at him, questioning his logic and calling him dumb, asking how he could expect her to take off her clothes in such a place. Deho explained patiently that keeping wet clothes on would defeat the purpose of the sleeping bag, as they would keep her body cold. He reassured her that he would turn around and not look. Though still skeptical, she admitted that her clothes were heavy and uncomfortable. She debated the logic of it all, but finally began changing, reluctantly giving in to the reality of the situation. Deho stepped outside the cave, giving her privacy, and as he stood there watching the rainfall intensify, he realized it was unlikely to stop soon. Sua's voice reached him as she asked about the next step, trapped alone on the mountain. Deho told her they just needed to wait a bit longer and trust the weather forecast. Sua, now inside the sleeping bag, whispered that although it was still cold, she felt somewhat warmer. She silently expressed gratitude for the sleeping bag Deho had brought, though worry remained in her mind about his condition. He had also been soaked by the rain and wasn't sheltered as she was. She feared he might fall ill. As her thoughts wandered, memories of the past flooded back. She suddenly remembered a time when Deho had returned home from school with baby chicks he'd bought from someone. At the time, she had scolded him harshly, telling him he wasn't a child anymore, but a high school student who shouldn't bring such things home. She had warned him that the chicks would die without proper care. But now she recalled how kind-hearted he had always been, even at a young age. She saw again in her mind how heartbroken he had been when the chicks eventually died, crying throughout the night. She had brought him an umbrella then, warning him that he would catch a cold if he stayed out in the rain. Looking back, she wondered if she had been selfish then. She also remembered how he had gotten sick afterwards, and how distant she had become. She had even asked him the reason he had bought the chicks in the first place. In that moment, she realized that the boy who cried over the loss of his baby chicks was the same now, standing in the cold rain, still as kind and vulnerable as before. Moved by a wave of sympathy, she inched closer to him and warned that he would catch a cold if he continued standing in the rain. He brushed off her concern with a grin, claiming to be super healthy. But she noticed the tremble in his voice and pointed out that he couldn't possibly say that with lips that were clearly shivering. Sua told Deho that he had to come inside the sleeping bag. He seemed surprised by her words and, after a moment of hesitation, stammered as he asked if she truly meant her words, wondering if she was really telling him to share the sleeping bag. She affirmed there was no other choice left. It was warm inside, and they would have to endure the awkwardness until the rain stopped. She insisted that he stay close for a little while longer. Deho quietly acknowledged her words and slowly moved to get inside the sleeping bag. As he did, Sua's mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. She had just invited him into the sleeping bag, which was clearly too small for the both of them, but there was nothing else she could do for him at that moment. If she let him stay outside any longer in his drenched clothes, he would undoubtedly catch a cold, and it would be her fault. She reflected on how he had carried all their supplies up the mountain without complaint, while she had simply followed along, assuming everything would go smoothly. The guilt started to settle in as she realized that if she had continued pretending that nothing was wrong, despite knowing everything he had done for her, then she would have failed to act like a proper Nuna. Just as these thoughts passed through her mind, she suddenly froze. A wave of shock hit her as she felt something lightly brushing against her inside the sleeping bag. Sua found herself caught in a wave of guilt, thinking how she had allowed Deho to carry all the heavy luggage by himself despite the pouring rain. Now, instead of acknowledging the situation, she had pretended it wasn't her concern. The thought struck her deeply. She felt like a terrible sister. Inside the cramped sleeping bag, she noted how narrow it was, making even the slightest movement difficult and uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Deho mentioned that he was still feeling very cold. Sua, surprised, reminded him that he had already gotten into the sleeping bag, questioning the reason he still hadn't warmed up. He explained that he had probably stayed out in the rain too long, but reassured her that his body would soon regain warmth. She advised him to stay closer to her and use her body heat to warm up. Wanting confirmation, he asked if he could really do that. She told him that he could, and he sincerely thanked her. However, the moment he embraced her, she yelped internally, startled, thinking that she had never told him to hug her. It was already so cramped inside the sleeping bag that the added closeness made it extremely uncomfortable. She tried to reason with herself, acknowledging that the sleeping bag was simply too small for both of them, and it couldn't be helped if he was still shivering from the cold. The discomfort kept growing, and she found herself overwhelmed. She felt she couldn't bear the situation any longer and began to wonder if she should have confronted him the moment he had first touched her. With restrained frustration, she asked him about his action and pointed out that perhaps he needed to raise his body temperature a bit more. She paused and began thinking about his words. Maybe he was right, she considered. It could indeed be a good experience and perhaps something necessary for her to understand better for the future. Still, the situation felt somewhat crazy, and the problem was that she wasn't at all prepared to experience this kind of sparring training partnership properly.